coincidentally, I was going on the ferry back to the mainland, John, yesterday.
I'm just going to always say New Jersey every time you say that until you stop. New Jersey?
So as I'm on the boat, I get an alert that all of my transcription servers in the data center are offline.
Oh, that's fun.
So all the Mac Minis. And I'm like, huh. Now, fortunately, they aren't literally all in that one data center. I have a few that are at Cyberlink, which is Mac Mini Vault, I believe was their name for that, but it's Cyberlink is like the company that behind it. So I have a few at Cyberlink, and I have a few in my house. And because transcripts are prioritized based on the show's popularity, and I have something like 12-ish total Macs that are not in the data center, I can go without some of them for a while, and you might not notice because the popular shows are still getting transcribed. And so anyway, so I'm on the boat, and I get all this alerts. I'm like, okay. So I do some quick diagnosis of like, can I remote desktop to any of them? Can I SSH to any of them? No. I open up the Unify Ubiquity portal thing of like their site manager. It's like, and it says the entire Unify console is offline. I'm like, that's not great. So I'm like, well, looks like I'm stopping at the data center on the way home. So I show up and, I go into the cage and everything is off. Like the power is off. All of the power lights are off to everything, including the console and everything.
Yeah, hold on. Let me stop you right there. To get into the cage, you have to pass through humans, right? So when you say...
Oh, no, definitely not. I have to pass through with like a key card. A data center does not typically have a ton of humans walking around. At least not, it's like there's like one guy at a security desk at the beginning who, you like wave to and that's it. Like, but then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But between the entry door to the building and the room that contains the servers, there's like 4 or 5 keycard doors.
I see. Okay.
And you need like the key card and a pin for most of them. So like it's a good amount of security because like data center, like who rents servers in a small data center like this? It's like banks and government offices, and like they have like compliance and security requirements and everything. So there's a lot of security and logging and everything.
So, but what I'm driving at is when you say that the cage was off, you're not talking about like the entirety of the data center. You're talking about your particular rack in the data center?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone else was fine.
Gotcha.
So my rack is just everything's off. And I'm like, that's not great. So, I opened the door and even, the door also had like, there's like a big like swinging like cage metal door that also has the keypad scanner on it front and back. So, nobody else who has access to the data center room with servers in it can access my servers unless they have my key card, so it's, and I can't access everyone else's, which again, for security, that's a good thing. So anyway, so I figure out that, remember I had mentioned when I was describing how I had to learn all this stuff and all, all the stuff I didn't know, I mentioned a couple things. One thing I mentioned is that data centers all use 220 volts, which I didn't know. So everything has to be like dual voltage, which most stuff is, which is fine. And also that it's fed from 2 different banks of power.
Yeah.
And you have to have a transfer switch. Anything that does not have 2 power supplies, you have to have an automatic transfer switch that like intelligently basically like keeps everything plugged into one source, and then if that source goes away, it instantly switches to the other source. Kind of like a UPS with no battery, just switching between two different power sources. Well, my ATS was dead. And so the switch, the power switch thing is just, I go and it's like blinking some weird lights and it's totally dead. I'm like, well, that's the problem. Okay. So long story short, I have to replace that now. I gotten some like cyber power thing and it was about $1,000, which I thought would be decent. I'm kind of thinking maybe it's not decent now.
Well, did you try unplugging it and plugging it back in from both power sources?
Of course.
That didn't fix it?
Well, it's like blinking these weird, it's basically blinking all of its lights at once. And what all the documentation and AI stuff I could find said was basically like, yeah, some part of the board probably failed. Great. So anyway, not super happy with cyberpower and that. I'm wondering if anybody out there has any specific recommendations for what I can replace it with.
It's not still under warranty? Is this so new?
It probably is. It's 6 months old. So I want to order something else. Right now I'm borrowing one from the data center for, until I get something else. Because also all these things have lead times to order. I'm curious, it seems like this is actually not that common of a need because there aren't that many options out there. And I think most people who are racking servers like this generally use servers with dual power supplies. So they can just plug directly into both power sources and they're fine. So I'm a little curious if anybody has any recommendations for, I need to plug in, 8 C13 plugs, I think they are, the IEC little, the 3-prong thingies. I think they're C13s. Anyway, I need to plug in 8 of those to something, and they take power from 2 C20s. So we'll see. If anybody has anything specific, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to order some trip light thing.
All right, we have a new member special. We did ATP tier list emoji. John, can you explain to us how we handled this, how you assembled this for us, please?
Yeah, so obviously we didn't do all emoji because there's just too many. We did a whole bunch, though, and all 3 of us just basically submitted lists of emoji that we wanted to put into tier lists, and that's how we came up with the list. There was a little bit of overlap, but actually not that much. And this was also another opportunity for me to try out my tier list app. Last time, a lot of people requested a feature where you could see the tile that we are tiering at a larger size. And so that feature was integrated, and it was very useful for the emoji. Although, like I said on the episode, I could only get emoji at 160 by 160 pixels. Maybe that's as big as they are in macOS, but I don't know. Anyway, well, they were scaled up past 160 by 160, so you could see them better in the video. And yes, like all our tier list videos, there is in fact, our tier list specials, there is in fact a video on YouTube at a secret URL that you should not share with non-members. But if you are a member, in the show notes at the very top will be a link to the video so you can watch us put emoji into tier list. And as usual, the episode, always all these member special episodes, but especially the tier list, ended up leading us into weird directions. I feel like this one had like a lesson at the end that I didn't anticipate going in. So maybe you're not interested in what we think about different emoji, but I think we did cover lots of aspects of what makes a good and bad emoji. And at the end, there's a little lesson of all this, something that I learned from the special, and maybe you'll learn it too. And I have gotten a lot of feedback from people who say they listened to the episode too, and were also surprised that they had different ideas about what emojis were supposed to mean and be used for than we did.
Fair enough. Marco, if you are not a member and wanted to become a member to hear this absolute incredible podcast episode and watch the absolute cinema that is John's YouTube video, how do you go about doing that?
atp.fm/join and just give us $8 a month. That's it. It's really simple.
Oh, and I will say that, again, like all the tier list things, that I updated the tier list app for this one. During this episode, I thought, this is great. I've named all of the little, I've named the emojis with the Apple name that they give them so we can read them on the show. They just appear in little tooltips that have like a modifier key that I can hold down and mouse over them. And then it was just the tooltips for being so annoying about appearing. And we had to fight with that the whole episode. Well, you'll be glad to know as soon as the episode ended, I fixed my tier list app to have much more reliable and easier to read tooltips. Basically, the problem was I was using the browser native tooltips. If you just do like title equal attribute on a thing, which is fine. That works. It's like native. You get it for free. But browsers tend to have a delay before they show that. Like if you mouse over something with a title equals whatever attribute, it will show the tooltip eventually. And that eventually thing is so flaky and weird. And I guess I was just not being patient enough or whatever. But anyway, I replaced that entirely with a better system. So next time, zoomed in tiles so you can see them, and also tooltips that work. And then the next episode that we do with tier list, I'll find out the next feature that my app needs that it doesn't have.
Right. Now, remind me, I'm genuinely asking. I'm not trying to snark. That was almost entirely vibe coded? Is that
100%.
Right?
Haven't touched any of the code. It's just entirely vibe coded. It was one of my first vibe coded things.
Gotcha.
And you will not hear anything about those tooltips in the audio version because of the magic of editing.
Yeah. It's in the bootleg, though. Although you will hear Casey try to come up with the name of all of the emoji, and then me jump in with the actual name once I get the tooltip to actually work.
That's exactly how it went. It really is. All right. And then with regard to the member special, this is a perfect segue. You apparently made a new vibe coded app, or no?
Yeah, I talked about this on an earlier episode that I had this, not that I do any video editing, but when we do these member specials, we do the tier list where we have a video of it. And again, it's just a video of the tier list so you can see us dragging things up. At the very least, that needs to be trimmed. I don't do any editing on it. It's basically unedited like a bootleg, but I trim off the beginning part where we're talking to each other and the end part after we're done. And me being me, I want to do that in a lossless way. And I had been using FFmpeg and asking ChatGPT for the FFmpeg invocation, because I could never figure it out. I would just say, I want to losslessly trim the ends off this thing. Here's the start point. Here's the end point. Give me the FFmpeg command line, and I'm going to copy and paste it. But that got old. And so I'm like, okay, in this vibe coding era, I'm going to make a little lossless video trimming app that does the same thing. I just give it a file. I have 2 text boxes, start and end, and it just trims the ends off. That's all it's supposed to do. And I talked about that app, I don't know, several episodes ago. And now I finally get to use it. For the first time I get to use it for real. We do a whole tier list thing. We record it. We get a video recording. I go to the video recording. I find the timestamps, put them in, hit trim, check the video that it had produced, and it was messed up. The video ended like 15 minutes before the audio. So like the video was not as long as the audio, which is not something that should happen, because it was the full video and the full audio. They were just massively different lengths, probably because of variable bitrate or something, or not variable frame rate. I don't even know. All I can say is it wasn't usable at all. And when I made this vibe coded app, I had mentioned this actual commercial app called Lossless Cut that does the same thing and way more. It's like a way more sophisticated app, but essentially does the same thing. You want to losslessly trim audio and video. This does it for you. And so I had to use Lossless Cut because my stupid vibe coded app didn't work. But of course, after I used Lossless Cut, I went back to my vibe coded trimming app and I said, I have a video file and I asked you to trim it, and the resulting file looks like garbage. Fix it. And it did. So maybe next time my app will work.
Cool.
Making progress left and right.
I mean, and I'll mention this as in another follow-up item if we get to it, but like, this is, I see lots of discussion about like everyone will be making their own custom apps with vibe coding or whatever. Software development is software development. Even if you're literally not writing the code, you like that phenomenon of I've made an app and I think it works on all these test files, and then you get a real file and you try and it doesn't work. That happens with apps that humans code too, all the time. Like that's just app development. You're like, oh, I'm done with my app. I made this little tool and it's great. Well, have you? How many bugs does your little tool have? Probably a ton. Whether you wrote it or whether an LLM wrote it, it's probably filled with bugs. And so you're going to use it, and then you're going to find more bugs. And it's just like the maintenance. There is no avoiding the maintenance of writing something, keeping it, working it, and finding all of the bugs and all the dark corners where they're hiding. There's no escape from that. At least so far, with current technology, there's no escape from that, with or without humans. So here I am making these toy apps to make my life easier, and all it's doing is reminding me that software development is software development, even if you're not writing the code.
All right. I wanted to share with the listeners that I think at this point, I can say I have leveled up my Sonos experience. And if you're not a Sonos or Unify person, maybe you can skip to the next chapter because this may or may not be relevant to you. But I wanted to tell everyone that, so when I first got my Sonos stuff, that was when I was still on Eero, and it all worked pretty much flawlessly. It was really, really reliable. Then I moved to Ubiquiti. We talked about this several episodes ago. What episode was that? I think it was 693. And we talked about how what happens is, and my understanding of this is very faint, so forgive me if I get this factually incorrect, but the gist is Sonos stuff would create their own kind of ad hoc-ish Wi-Fi network that they call SonosNet. And what would happen is, particularly if you plugged one of your Sonos speakers into Ethernet, which most of the non-portable speakers have Ethernet jacks, if you plugged something into Ethernet and had SonosNet running, it would try to bridge these two networks. And oftentimes, because of spanning tree protocol or STP, there would be some sort of thing that would cause Ubiquiti to crash out, to use what the children use these days, or basically just freak out. And it was annoying. And so that led me to following Ubiquiti's official recommendations, which is to either go all in on Ethernet or not. And so I took all my stuff off Ethernet, and it was mostly fine, but like latency, particularly when starting or stopping something, was kind of a pain in the butt. And occasionally I felt like I wasn't getting reception, so to speak, on a portable speaker where I really should. I'm not that far away from a Ubiquiti wireless access point, and yet it's still, like pausing or dropping the audio every, 30, 40 seconds, something like that. And then if you recall in 693, what we were talking about was that Ubiquiti put a shot across Sonos's bow because they had a marketing video where they talk about, and if you have troublesome IoT equipment, and they're focused on like a Sonos speaker labeled as Sonos on their little Ubiquiti dashboard that Marco was talking about earlier, you can turn on the STP Edge, which will prevent these sorts of issues, yada, yada, yada. And I tried that, and it seemed to help a smidge, but it didn't really help that much. Well, good news. Our long national nightmare is over. Our long international nightmare is over, because maybe a couple months ago, Sonos, this was about 2 months ago, came out with a new version of their apps that lets you turn off SonosNet. So it will only use Ethernet or Wi-Fi. It will not create their own ad hoc thing. And so on Reddit's announcement post, there's a kind of an FAQ. Should I disable SonosNet on my modern network? To which the answer is for most modern high-speed routers, disabling SonosNet can actually help things run smoother. Newer routers use Wi-Fi technology that can sometimes conflict with SonosNet's mesh. So turning it off lets your system lean fully on your home network instead. So if you think about it, when Sonos was brand new, the quality of Wi-Fi, I don't know when this was, but this is like 20-ish years ago. The quality of Wi-Fi in the home was friggin' terrible. And they couldn't rely on your home or apartment's Wi-Fi in order to have a stable connection. And so SonosNet made sense 20 years ago, but I'm not so sure it makes a whole bunch of sense now. So there was a different post on Reddit where they have a full-on FAQ. One of the questions was, how does this affect surround stereo pairs in home theater? Which is a question I had because you want extremely low latency between, like, I have a Sonos Arc Ultra, which is wired into Ethernet, and then I have two 1SLs in the back and a Sonos Sub Gen 3. And so how does that work? So the question was, how does this affect surround stereo pairs in home theater? No changes to your surrounds or sub. They still connect directly to your primary soundbar exactly like they do today, with or without this setting. That low latency link is its own thing and isn't part of SonosNet, so disabling SonosNet doesn't touch it. The one nuance, if you had a soundbar connected over Ethernet, with SonosNet off, it'll stop bridging SonosNet out to your other Sonos speakers. It'll still talk to its own surrounds and sub. And heads up, disabling SonosNet is not the same as disable Wi-Fi in a single speaker. That one does cut off a surround or sub entirely. Different settings, different results. So again, the SonosNet thing was their own thing, and you can turn that off now, which is great. And then additional FAQ option or question: I'm on Unify. Can I finally mix wired and wireless without the network going crazy? I didn't write that question, but I could have. So the answer was, with SonosNet running, it could create extra network paths back to your Unify gear. And if spanning tree wasn't enabled on all the ports with Sonos players with the right port cost, that's where a lot of the chaos came from. Turning SonosNet off removes those alternate paths and should clear up that common scenario. I can't promise it fixes every Unify issue. That really depends on your topology and the specific problem. But for the wired plus wireless makes my network misbehave headache, this is the fix a lot of you have been waiting for. Hello, that's me. That's what I was waiting for. And then finally, I thought it was interesting. The official guidance on the Sonos knowledge base, if you will, has changed slightly. And so we'll put a link to the support article in the show notes. Wired setup without dedicated Sonos wireless. I'm sorry, let me back up. This is to choose between wired or wireless Sonos setup. And then one of the options is wired setup without dedicated Sonos wireless network. With SonosNet disabled, you can connect one or more Sonos products to your router via Ethernet cable while the rest of your system stays connected to your home Wi-Fi. SonosNet can be re-enabled at any time. The setup is suitable for situations where your home Wi-Fi is strong, but you want to hardwire specific products for a more stable connection. That's me. You want the remaining wireless products to continue using your home Wi-Fi directly. Also me. And you want to simplify your network setup and keep more control over your home network configuration. Yes, yes, and yes. So I apologize for a lot of reading, but I thought for the 6 of you that are in the same situation I am, this is a very convenient and useful PSA. So if you two don't have any questions, I'll move right along. Excellent. Friend of the show, Louis Mantilla, wrote a very interesting blog post where Louis was basically saying, maybe Squircle jail isn't so bad. John, can you tell us about this?
This is Louis' heel turn. Yeah, he basically presents the argument for Squircle jail. Here's why it's good. And even though I think all the things he said are true, I still hate it for the reasons he said. So some of his arguments are basically, if you wanted to sum up the gist of it, is that Squircle jail, which as a reminder is the enforced by the operating system rule that macOS icons must fit within a particular shape squircle that Apple defines. And if your icon does not fit in that squircle, Apple will take whatever your icon is, shrink it down, and shove it inside a gray squircle. So it's very draconian. Big Sur recommended this way back when, and some apps followed it and some apps didn't. And Apple decided, you know what? We're done recommending. No choice. You go in the squircle. That's Squircle jail. And so Louis basically says this effectively makes it so that the best icons have to be a little worse because the best icons were not always constrained by the squircle. So they are necessarily going to be worse because now they have this new constraint that they didn't have before that makes them more samey and everything. But it also makes the worst icons better because the worst icons were really bad. Like even in the Big Sur recommendation, the recommendation was you should be in a squircle that's like this. And the squircle was not the size of the full icon. The full icon would be like 1024 by 1024 or whatever, but the squircle was inset from that. But then things like games would ship and they'd be like, oh, our icon is the character from our game. And he fills the whole thing. And so you'd have like on your dock, you'd have a bunch of squircles and a bunch of other apps. And then you'd have this big square that is taller and wider than all the other icons because they didn't get the memo about using margins because they don't care about the Mac. And you're just lucky this game runs on the Mac at all. You'll take what you can get. So Squircle Jail makes it so no matter what garbage you put in your app, no matter what the developer of this app makes for their icon, we will make sure that no matter what it is within the new designated squircle. And that does make it so that you don't have these ugly third-party apps in your dock that just don't fit in and don't look right and look like they're garbagey shovelware, because that's exactly what they are. So it's kind of a leveling force. He also makes some arguments how like, even though all the apps are the same shape, now we can tell that a document is like a tall rectangle and an app is a squircle and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, that's great. But like, I don't need to know their apps. If they're in the dock, I can tell their apps. I don't have to get them confused with folders or whatever. like that apps are, that basically is the argument. The iPhone defined an app as a squircle and apps are squircles and all apps should be squircles because that's the app shape. It's even used in like the SF symbols is like app. It's just a squircle. I don't find that argument compelling because I still wish my apps could, at the very least, break the squircle, if not be entirely non-squircle shaped. But yeah, it is a leveling. It is a make the bad icons better and make the greatest icons worse. And the average goes up as a result of that, but it makes this sameness that I do not find particularly pleasing. And also, I like people who can't make icons to have terrible icons. That's an important signal. It's like, oh, if only we could help them by programmatically trying to make their icon better. It's like, they should be punished for not making good icons. If it's a bad port of a game and they've used the full icon area and their thing looks weird, it should look weird. Let it look weird. I want the best to be able to flourish. And like, I don't like this leveling. So anyway, you can read it. And he's an icon designer and, he goes through all like the downsides of Squircle Jail. And he has plenty of complaints about this particulars of Icon Composer and how it works, as we talked about last week and when we talked about our icons. So I encourage you to read the post because it's very interesting and informed by literal decades of making icons professionally, including, I believe, for Apple. So this is not just like some random opinion, but I personally wish that constraint did not exist. I wish icons were free to look their best and their worst.
Yeah, I think I love that Louis wrote this because first of all, I think it's a pretty bold stance to go to write this in the sphere that we are in, like in like the Apple nerd sphere, and you have people like John Gruber holding up the other end of the argument pretty strongly, and obviously John but to come out and say like, hey, here's actually some pretty good reasons why the squircles being enforced actually makes sense. But I think you have to also kind of, I don't know if Louis came out and said this, but I think the strong implication is that these are Apple's reasons. And I don't know, because Louis works very closely with it in this world. So like my guess is he has heard from people who have told him this is the reason. And that I think is really interesting to hear that like, the reason why Apple makes the design decisions they do is not always communicated to us. It's almost never communicated to us. And sometimes they do stuff like Squircle Jail where, we can't see any upside to this. Like we from the outside look at this and we're like, why would we do that? Why would they do that? The only possible reason is that Alan Dye sucks. But there actually was probably an argument internally about this particular thing, and this is the reason they went with this behavior. And even though we don't necessarily agree with it, it was really interesting, I think, to be presented with that argument and to consider, oh, well, it isn't just because somebody's stupid. It's because they had a trade-off that they were optimizing for. And they chose differently than I would have chosen, probably, but they did have a reason.
Well, I've always understood the reason. Like, even when they did it in Big Sur, I totally understood why Apple wanted to do this. Like, it was obvious. The thing that I hate so much about Squircle Jail is not so much their decision, which I disagree with, that they made in Big Sur that all Mac icons should be squircles. What I disagree with is that they entirely threw out the carrot and just brought stick. And they were like, because they tried in Big Sur. They said, this is what we want to do. And adoption wasn't terrible. Adoption wasn't terrible. Like, we all saw a lot of Mac icons go squircle in Big Sur, which I think was macOS 11. We're very bad at remembering these things, but it was a while ago. And obviously there's a discontinuity between 15 and 26. Anyway, Big Sur was a while ago. And when they did that, it's like, well, obviously they want to do this because apps on all their platforms are the same and this is leveling and blah, blah, blah. And like, it makes sense from a platform owner's perspective and for someone who is in the mindset of like, look, I'm in charge of all Apple platforms and I want this uniformity. But the argument against it then was like that we don't appreciate that uniformity on the Mac. I don't care what icons look like. I don't care what app icons look like on the iPad and iPhone, blah, blah, blah. But they weren't happy with the adoption they were getting, which again, I think was pretty good. I think most Mac apps post Big Sur in a couple of years went squircely. But some of them, like Rogueamoeba's app, went squircely, but like, oh, the microphone and audio hijack is just poking out of the thing because it's just a fun way to do it. It makes for a nice composition. And the thing about Squircle Jail is not so much the decision that they made back in Big Sur, but it was, now if you're 1 pixel outside that thing, we punish you. We make your icons look worse. Your app that you already shipped, that you didn't plan on updating the icon for, like there was no sort of like, oh, you get a pass because you built this app before, like we made this decision. It was like, nope. I don't care when your app was compiled. I don't care when it was built. I don't care anything about it. You are going in Squircle Jail. That's the thing about it that I think is so terrible. Obviously, I disagree with the squircling decision too, but the jail part adds an extra insult to it because it takes people's work and it makes it look worse. And let me maintain his point. It makes the terrible icons look better because they were so bad before that being put into Squircle Jail improves them. Like they get a sheen on the top, they're the right shape and the right size, they fit in better in the dock. But I don't care about garbage apps. I don't help the garbage apps at the cost of punishing Rogue Amoeba for having a 2 pixel thing, or what was the other one? I think like Pastebot had they had a clipboard icon and the little metal, like the metal thing that you squeeze to put, to hold paper in the clipboard. The top of that poked out above the clipboard by 2 pixels. Squircle Jail. So anyway, please check out the post. It comes from a very informed position, and it's balanced and very nuanced. It's not like he's coming out strongly in favor of Squircle Jail. He's like, it sucks in these ways, and it's good in these ways, and in the end, he is in favor of the leveling because the appearance of one terrible icon in his dock bothers him so much that he's like, yeah, they deserve to be punished and shoved into a smaller spot. But yeah, opinions vary.
Well, and we've all seen those apps. Like we've all downloaded some like open source thing, and the icon is just like a big square that filled up the entire bounds,
or a squircle that's the wrong size. I just did that recently with an app. I don't want to blame this app because it's not their fault. Because I think they were trying to do the right thing, but their squircle was like top to bottom left right. Like there was no margins around the squircle, so it was bigger than all the other squircles.
It is a very modern Apple-y thing to have the thought process of like, let's make it impossible for people to do the wrong thing. Let's enforce with technical measures the design that we think is right and harmonious and whatever, BS or terms you want to use. It's a very modern Apple thing to enforce by like technical restrictions doing what they think is right.
Rather than competing on the merits. You're right, that is an Apple thing.
Well, yes, but yeah, totally. But like, you can see how they get there. Again, like, I don't think this was the right decision, but you can totally see how modern Apple, with their modern sensibilities, would easily be able to convince themselves that the right solution to a problem is to make it technically impossible to break out of the bounds that they want to enforce.
Yeah, and they were so mean about it too. Like they're just 2 degrees off of a perfectly valid solution. To give just 2 quick examples. One, they made it so that you get the Squircle icon even on, you can't have like I was trying to do for all those times. I had these amazing hacks to be like, on the old OS, I get the old icon. Like on a Mac OS 15 and earlier, I get my old icon. And in 26 and later, I get the new one. Apple's like, nope, we're not going to bother letting you do that. Oh, you figured out a way to do that? We're going to close that hole. We don't want that to happen, which is so dumb because it goes against their uniformity thing, because a Tahoe icon in Mac OS 15 does not fit in. It looks really weird, right? So they did that. And like, if they wanted to make it essentially like it's hard to do the wrong thing, make it hard but not impossible. That's the power of the defaults. People who don't care about their apps, like, oh, by default, they build with the new SDK, we Squircle jail them.
Well, but then you have the power user problem. The world is filled with people who are like, I know what I'm doing, so I'll check the power user box, and then they shoot themselves in the foot.
But it's not the shovelware game developers. They're not going to dig out the checkbox buried 20 levels deep to make their icon uglier. Like, you just gotta, the defaults go a long way. Like, there's a continuum, which is like lead by example, which they tried to do in Big Sur. It's a recommendation and lead by example. And I think that got them really far. But they're like, no, it's not far enough. There's still people who aren't following our lead. So then I would have said, make it default, make it actually hard to do it the other way, and then allow people's old icons to still be viewed on the old OS and new icon on the new OS, like have this transition period, right? And then see what your adoption is like. And if it's in the mid-90s, you'd be like, we're probably done. We don't have to really. But they just went straight to draconian, punishing everybody. And by the way, you can't use your old icon on old OSs either, which really sucked. Anyway, this is not the end of the world. It's just, like I said when I posted about this, literally the worst thing Apple has ever done related to design on the Mac, not because it's so bad, but because it's so severe. It is a minor thing. It's not that big of a deal, but they have never punished app developers in the same way when it comes to design, when it comes to pricing and stuff and business practices. They've done much worse things, but design specifically, never have they done anything this bad. I think even brushed metal and stuff was not this bad.
What about all the icons in the menus?
No, not as bad.
Oh, brave, bold stance, John Syracuse.
You could turn that off real easily.
One thing to consider also is, you are characterizing this as a punishment, and I'm saying it's technically enforced. But I think that also kind of casts an attitude or an intent that might not have been that considered. It's very possible that as they were writing the, whatever parts of the dock and whatever parts of the system render icons, they had to change a lot of that when they brought in Liquid Glass and Icon Composer icons, because now these icons are not just bitmaps that they're rendering. They now have this dynamic rendering that we talked about last episode of you're defining layers and effects and it's rendering them in real time. And so they had to probably rewrite a bunch of parts of the system that render icons in different places. And maybe when they were doing that, they were just it's a lot easier to do this, or to avoid some complexity, or to avoid some possible bugs if we just draw in a squircle shape. And if we draw every icon in the same canvas shape, it helps us somehow implement this feature. And so it could have just been as simple as they were doing that, and they're like, oh yeah, we got to figure out what to do with old icons. And they might have just crapped out a solution because they only had 2 seconds because macOS is under-resourced all the time, and they might have just had to rush together some kind of solution for compatibility with old icons, and that's just what they came up with as quickly as they could. And maybe it wasn't that much thought about of we should enforce this technically. Maybe it was just as simple as this is a quick hack, and then it passed some review and they didn't have time to do anything better, or no one really thought about it.
Well, they've had plenty of time to change it since then, but I don't think your idea about the circle simplification is true, because all of the runtime icon setting APIs let you set it to anything you want. And if you're not in the Mac App Store, you can set it to anything you want too. So obviously their icon rendering system still 100% supports all the old icon sizes, formats, and everything. They just don't let you ship an app that does that by default through the Mac App Store. Right. Again, if you're outside the Mac App Store, there's APIs where you can get around this. But it's punitive, because it's punitive to your icon. You did an icon design, and they're going to make your icon design look uglier, because nobody's icon looks good shrunken 70% and put on a gray background. That is a punishment. That is a stick to make you do what you weren't doing before. You didn't follow their lead in Big Sur, and you've got a tiny thing poking out of the rim of your icon. They could have even made you can have some things poking out, and it's okay, we won't put you into squircle jail. Nothing. And again, Tahoe's been out for a while, and they haven't made any adjustments. And I also think they haven't made any adjustments in 27. So it seems like they're pretty dedicated to this, and I'll just have to live with it. But it will go down in infamy. If I could think of a shirt to yell at them about it, I would. But I don't think this idea fits on a shirt very well.
Shirtle?
Yeah, I see what you're doing there. I don't know if that works.
It doesn't work. No, I need to workshop that one.
We are sponsored this week by Leesa. Let me tell you a true story. When I do ad reads for ATP, I typically try to record them around 7 o'clock at night, which is just a little while before we start at 8. And I do that because I want my voice to sound kind of fresh, but also similar to how it'll sound on the show. Well, if I sound a little different or gravelly right now, it's because it's 10:51 p.m. and I'm tired. I am looking forward to bed. If you also want to look forward to bed, then let me tell you about Leesa. Leesa has a lineup of beautifully crafted mattresses tailored to how you sleep. Each mattress is designed with specific sleep positions and feel preferences in mind. They have all sorts of different mattresses for all sorts of different body sizes, and including, kids. They have mattresses for your pet, or I should say pet beds. They have a wide variety of different mattresses, including they sent us a natural mattress, actually a natural hybrid mattress. And they did this for Michaela's room because she was the one most in need of a new mattress. However, I wanted to be able to honestly talk about it on the show in moments like this one. And so before we moved it to her room, we put it in the guest room for a few nights, and I slept on it for a few nights. And I got to tell you, it's genuinely very good. it's something that I kind of wish that I had done our mattress instead, because I really like the one that Michaela now has. From night one, you'll feel the difference. Premium materials that deliver serious comfort and full body support, no matter how you sleep. Just take the Leesa Sleep Quiz, and you'll find your perfect match in 2 minutes or less. Leesa mattresses are meticulously designed and assembled in the USA for exceptional quality, and they back it all up with free shipping, easy returns, and a 120-night sleep trial. So go to Leesa.com for 25% off select mattresses, plus an extra $50 off with promo code ATP, exclusive for our listeners. That's Leesa.com, promo code ATP for 25% off select mattresses, plus an extra $50 off. And when you use our code, of course, you are supporting our show. Leesa.com, promo code ATP. Thank you to Leesa for sponsoring the show. Okay, so last week on Overtime, we discussed how Sony is no longer shipping PlayStation discs or game discs after 2028. Glenn Jarvis writes, one more aspect of Sony's decision to no longer sell PlayStation discs is its impact on competition. In making games digital only, Sony will run the only store where you can buy PlayStation games. Thus far, Sony has always had to compete with physical and online retailers, GameStop, Amazon, etc. Even if you only ever purchase digitally, you have still benefited from this competition and the impact it has on prices and sales.
And the fact that there's a resale market for reselling discs, so that's going to drive down the prices of stores. But yeah, that's why companies love it. Hey, now we control all sales because we don't have to sell to retailers. We don't have to, ship inventory. We don't have to give the retailers a cut of the sales. It's wonderful for Sony, not so great for gamers.
Yeah, you know what every company loves? Hey, can we make more money? Let's yes, then we're going to do it. Let's do that. Let's make more money.
That sounds excellent. All right, and also within the same context, CD sales are up, as it turns out. Jay Peters at The Verge writes, CD sales are apparently going up, reportedly thanks to fans realizing they're an affordable way to support their favorite artists. According to a new report from research firm Luminate, 16.3 million CDs were sold in the first half of 2026 in the U.S., a 16% increase year over year. The growth in CD sales was driven by collection building, price accessibility, massive albums such as BTS's Arang, I probably pronounced that wrong, I'm sorry, and strong K-pop release schedule, Luminate says.
I feel like this is just the natural progression of the weirdos who were into vinyl, but now there's like a slightly younger generation who are like, okay, well, what is the equivalent? My age minus whatever equals vinyl. And then younger people come along and they say, my age minus whatever equals CDs. It's retro. And I've seen it in my daughter. She suddenly got into CDs and wanted to see all my CDs, which I did not want to let her touch, but she was going to destroy them. But she just took them anyway. And she bought herself a little portable CD player. And it's just like,
yeah, I remember this.
The new retro thing that instead of vinyl, it's CDs. The good thing about CDs is they have better sound quality at least, and they don't get worse every time you play them. So I endorse kids looking at, and in fact, they probably have better sound quality than most of the streaming they're listening to.
Probably.
Depending on how they're mastered, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I still think it's kind of silly, but it's less silly than vinyl. So that's fine. And I don't actually think people are buying them to support artists, but it is true that artists surely get tons more money from you buying one of their CDs than you streaming their song literally thousands or millions of times.
Yeah, I mean, let's just be honest. CDs are cool. That's it. Like, and the reason why kids of various generations keep getting into old media, first of all, it is novel to them, and it has the appeal of retro stuff. Like that's why. Do you know how many people I see walking around all the time wearing Nirvana shirts? Who are, like 15 years old. It's like,
weren't born when.
Yeah, not even close to born. Like, like Kurt Cobain died probably 15 years before they were born. Like, it's not even close. But that's, look, like when we were in high school and, somebody of our generation was wearing like a Pink Floyd shirt.
Yeah. I don't know what the offset is, but like I said, whatever the number of years is that you have to subtract, because we weren't going back to like wax cylinders, right? Like we weren't like, oh, wax cylinders are retro.
Well, it wasn't that. We weren't that old, John. But we weren't going back to 8-tracks.
Right. So exactly. So there is some offset of like this number of years before you were born is when things are retro cool. Things before that, nah, don't bother. Things after that, oh, that's just normal. So whatever that offset is, I think now that the generation that is of age to listen to music, the offset lands them in CDs.
Well, and it's it's similar to like it's that same generation also thinks old crappy digital cameras are really cool.
Yes, my daughter was into that and borrowed my old crappy digital. I told her the camera on your phone is better than this. She's like, I don't care.
Yeah, they know it's fine. I mean, just like everything sounds better than vinyl, but no one cares, right? Like that's people like novelty, and I think the reason we didn't go back to like 8 tracks when we were young is that we didn't have like ubiquitous streaming music that would be our alternative. Like we were living in a music scarce world still. It was just scarce on different media. And if we were going to go back and try to buy an 8-track player and 8-tracks, they wouldn't have been nearly as cheap as CDs are today. Like CDs cost nothing. Like if you want to go buy a used CD, you can go on, wherever, Amazon or whatever, or your local whatever store and get used CDs for nothing. Like they just cost nothing. And I'm sure you can get CD. People still make CD players, so that they're not that hard to come by. So for a young person today to get into that kind of stuff, like it's more different than their experience of music today because it works so differently than streaming in so many ways, and it's super cheap, and their parents have a million of them. So
yeah, and music scarcity is novel, like you said. Music scarcity was not novel to us when we were kids because it was just the situation. But once you get into a place where music is no longer scarce, the scarcity itself is a novel aspect of that draws into it. And as for the CD players, like the one my daughter bought is so clearly made for people her age. Like it was like so you're a teen in 2024. This whatever, $10 CD player is specifically for you. Like it's not, if you look at it and like, I think I told you about it once, like the door to the place where you put the CD didn't open all the way. So you had to kind of like slide the CD. Like you couldn't just put it vertically into it. You had to slide the edge in and put it down. It's like, don't they know how to, they lost the knowledge about how to make CD players non-stupid, but she liked it. So
that's all that matters. Your discussion about, what's novel and what isn't reminds me of the Douglas Adams quote, "Anything that is in the world when you're born is normal and ordinary and is just a natural part of the way the world works. Anything that's invented between when you're 15 and 35 is new and exciting and revolutionary, and you can probably get a career in it." Hello, computers, for at least Marco and me. Or not computers, like internet, etc. Anyway, the quote continues, "Anything invented after you're 35 is against the natural order of things."
Yeah, that quote doesn't go backwards, though. They should have said anything, in heavy use 15 years before you were born is retro cool, whatever the offset is.
All right, then let's go to price increase corner, my favorite corner. Chance Miller, 9to5Mac, writes, "Apple has raised the price of Apple Music," which I saw and was like, yeah, whatever. I'm not a fan of them raising prices, but I have Apple One. It's fine, right? So Chance writes, Apple Music Individual goes up to $12. I believe this is a month. Family goes up, it's $12 from $11, so a difference of $1. Family goes from $17 to $20, difference of $3. Student goes from from $6 to $7, which is a difference of $1. But then I kept reading, and it says Apple One. Individual, $19.95, which is remaining unchanged. Family goes up $2 to $27.95, and Premier goes up $2 to $39.95. And then one of you, I presume John, found a chart by Basic Apple Guy, which points out that when Apple One Premier launched, which was roughly 2020 or thereabouts, it was $30 a month, which I thought was actually a legitimately decent to good deal. Now, 6 years later, it's $40 a month, and I'm not sure how much I feel about how happy I am about that.
Does that even track inflation, though? Like, I put this in here. I wish they had drawn an inflation line. What this shows is basically the prices of everything is going up. But that happens with inflation, and we've had some difficult inflation times here. And you can see there's kind of an increase on the plateau, then another increase, so it's not steady. But I didn't do the math to figure out what would be the inflation-adjusted price. But Apple One is still a good deal at $40. But just FYI, the price and everything's going up. And I'm pretty sure Apple Music and Apple One do not include any RAM or storage.
No, I thought Apple One did include storage.
You know what I mean? Like the actual service is not like it's not RAM prices are not going up. What's driving these price increases? Is it because SSDs and RAM cost more? No, this is just a service. But yeah, the price of things goes up over time. And I think this kind of shows that Apple services are I don't know what the economic term for it is, but like changing the price is probably not going to appreciably affect how many people continue to be subscribed to it because people who have the service like the service and are not that sensitive to a $1 or $2 adjustment. Because like I said, all these adjustments they're per month still, but it's like $1, $3, $1, $2, $2. Those are the increases. So even though percentage wise, they might be high, absolute value wise, this is like one extra cup of coffee a month for these services. So I think Apple's going to get away with it just fine. But FYI, it's not just things that have RAM and storage that are increasing in price.
John, that was a much better joke than I gave you credit for. I was not picking up what you were putting down, and I apologize. The offending person will be sacked. Mark Ehrman writes, prices for monthly AppleCare Plus packages went up by 50 cents for Macs and iPads, while the annual offering rose by $5. The increases are exclusively for new signups, so users of older plans will retain the current prices.
That's nice. It's too bad they don't do that with the other services, right?
Yeah,
Can
right.
you imagine? Like if you're already subscribed, you keep your old price. I guess that's probably not tenable, but yeah. Pricing's increased corner. I'm not sure when it will go away, but it just keeps coming.
All right, so I asked, it was either last episode or the episode before about FileMaker and what the heck is it? I think it was 2 episodes ago, or no, it was last episode, then we got some feedback about it. And so some of that feedback includes Anonymous, who writes basically answering the question, why are people still using FileMaker? Anonymous says, FileMaker developers would probably admit that they are not the most technically knowledgeable, but they understand the business problem they are trying to solve better than most quote-unquote developers in any language. Over the years, many businesses have tried and failed to move off of their old FileMaker systems. But now with agentic coding, more and more people are thinking it's possible. Claris is making a big deal about their upcoming agentic development support because it's the only way FileMaker will survive. If it were actually possible to quote-unquote vibe code a FileMaker app versus a web app, I still think FileMaker has some advantages. I promise this next part is not meant to be a sales pitch, but you asked what it's like to be a FileMaker developer. And these are some of the key reasons people still use FileMaker today. FileMaker doesn't scale to thousands of users well, but it's more than powerful enough for small businesses to run their internal systems. Therefore, if FileMaker works, why spin up all this extra web technology that you don't understand as well? FileMaker is just an app that can work with no internet connection. It's an easy way to deploy an offline app on iPhones or iPads to collect data in the field, especially in low coverage areas or on the ocean. FileMaker apps aren't subject to all the increased CVEs due to AI, making it a safer choice for businesses to deploy internal tools. I first discovered FileMaker before I even knew how to code, and now, even though I do know how to code, and agents are helping me code much faster, there's still something special about FileMaker being this all-inclusive app and platform that your app can be deployed into securely that is intriguing. For those of us who know how to write code, it's easy to miss the value in an app like this. I think FileMaker's biggest hurdle is their licensing doesn't allow someone to try and use it for free for more than 45 days, which allows more modern apps like Monday.com to gain more of the market.
I feel like this is a list of things that are, things that are still nice about FileMaker. And the largest argument for most FileMaker things is, hey, is it currently working and it supports your business? Then you don't need to change it. So you enjoy the advantages and it's working, so it's fine. But it is so clearly just technology that I don't think anyone should start off using in this day and age. Even for a totally local thing, it's possible to make entirely locally running apps that are not based on web technology or just a regular app or, even if it's like a local web app. Like we have so much better technologies, and we'll see as we go on, like FileMaker, these, the apps and forms and everything that they make, they never looked good. I remember back in the classic macOS days, they always looked weird, and they continued to look super weird. And as for them being no CVEs due to AI finding flaws, I think that's just a security through obscurity thing. If you pointed any kind of security researcher, human or otherwise, at FileMaker and its various apps, it would rip it to shreds because they're not made with security in mind. Now, granted, they're not network connected, so that helps them avoid things like this. But anyway, I do not endorse starting any new projects in FileMaker, but the people who like it and use it, there's no reason that they shouldn't continue to use it, because if it's solving your problem, like if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And I think that is the largest argument. And that's why, like I said, the people who have a business running a FileMaker, as long as FileMaker keeps going and stays as a viable application and they keep updating it and your thing keeps working and they add little enhancements over time, there's no reason to look elsewhere. But yeah, if you're starting something fresh, I would still recommend maybe not FileMaker in 2026.
Point of order, you said that they're not network connected. I think that can be true, but is not exclusively true, because I believe a few people wrote in and said that they have a way to deploy FileMaker stuff to the web. So before we get a bunch of feedback. Yeah,
I mean, it's the argument this person was making is like you can use them entirely offline and so on and so forth. So, but yeah, I would not vouch for the security strength of FileMaker at this point.
Yeah, because you could also use like a SQLite database and any app. Like there's a lot of ways to solve this problem with today's software and tools, especially as we're about to get to.
Yep. So Robert Thompson writes, Marco got me off FileMaker after 18 years, which of course definitely piqued my interest, and I presume Marco and John's as well. Robert writes, for the last 18 years, I used it to run the back end of my wife's wedding business. It handled leads, contracts, staffing, timelines, payments, and automated tasks like email reminders. It was also slow, looked terrible, never worked on mobile, and required basic plugins that cost hundreds of dollars every few years. Worst of all, building anything in it felt like coding in Scratch, with commands dragged and dropped into a script editor. John nailed it. It's software anyone can use to create a database one step above Excel. This past May, when our renewal came up, we were quoted $4,100 for a 3-year server license. That same week, HTTP 690 was released, and I heard Marco talk about using Claude Code to build his Saunter map app in under an hour. I thought, if Marco can submit to the App Store in under an hour, I can do this in a month. So I said, screw it. Installed Claude Code on a local Linux box, hit the Fable window, and ran it. We should disclose once again that we have been sponsored by Claude. We will be sponsored by Claude. This obviously does not, we didn't write any of this stuff, but just so you know, they are a former and future sponsor. Anyway, continuing with what Robert said, within 3 days, I had recreated and greatly improved the system we had used for 18 years. Everything is better. It's fast, it's organized, and a proper web app. I can process a detailed lead with fancy timelines on my phone in under a minute standing in line. It's amazing. The entire rebuild cost me $100. We've now been using it for 2 months, and it's been remarkably solid, and I've been having a blast adding new features. If I hadn't caught that episode, I would have paid $4,100 and been stuck in FileMaker hell for another 3 years. Instead, I got out for $100.
Yeah, so this is the other thing about people who are using FileMaker. Like, if it's working for your business or whatever, there's no need to change it. But when you're in a market like that, where it's like you are using some very old technology and your business relies on it, someone out there knows that your business relies on it. And maybe they also know that you're not particularly in a position to change that, which is why you've been using FileMaker for 18 years to run your wedding business.
Right?
But lo and behold, now suddenly you're not stuck in FileMaker. There's this new alternative that is not open to everybody, but if you're the type of person who's basically a FileMaker expert, it's not that far of a leap to go to like, I bet you could do some vibe coding stuff to make a decent app. Now, how will this turn out? Again, see my caveats about vibe coded apps. It's really easy to get the first one up and you're amazed that it works and everything. Where are all the bugs? Is it going to be as problem-free as the thing you've been using for 18 years? So on and so forth. But on the flip side of that is the excitement of building something new with modern technologies and so on. So I'm not saying everybody who's on FileMaker should vibe code their replacements, but the fact that that's now a viable alternative, I would imagine, is going to further accelerate the decline of FileMaker usage. And I'm not sure if it's going to raise or lower the prices of these weird server plugin licenses that people are charging. But yeah, when you're in a technological backwater, things get weird.
Yep. And then all three of us, I should say, really wanted to shout out Adam1, who wrote us. John apparently computed a nearly 3,000 word email with 15 screenshots explaining the history and functionality of FileMaker. It was fascinating. I don't think it's published anywhere public, so I can't share it. But I wouldn't even begin to try to summarize it. But we wanted to shout out to Adam because that was really incredible. So thank you for taking the time.
You asked, like, what is FileMaker and why do people still use it? I feel like that could have just been like a blog post somewhere, and that answers every one of your questions with copious screenshots and history, like the background, where did it come from? How do people use it? Like, if you were interested in FileMaker, that was the answer. It's a shame that he just emailed it us and did not publish it on the web, but maybe, he'll make a FileMaker database with it. People can view it through their cloud integration.
Right.
Also, I for an email to stand out among the FileMaker emails that we got,
which we continue to get. One just came in while we were talking, by the way.
Yes. For one to stand out as being long really is saying something, because I think the average word count of the FileMaker emails we've gotten has got to be like 1,000 at least. Like, it seems like everybody who uses FileMaker not only is emailing us, but also has a lot to say about it.
I'm going to shout out to Adam, too. I think it was his email. I think he's actually a pretty good writer. I think it's maybe because I'm reading too much German stuff, and I was reading this like, look at these sentences. They make sense. They logically connect. They're just, it's never confusion about what something refers to. It's like, wow. I don't know if Adam is a professional writer or something, but it was very well written.
I think at this point, everyone who uses FileMaker is a professional writer. Like that's what our emails are showing.
Right.
But yes, Adam's really did stand out as being especially good and thorough.
Yeah, maybe it's because they're all older and actually learned how to write in school or something. I don't know. Maybe it's just ageism. I'm thinking all the old people who are writing about FileMaker are old. But anyway, FileMaker fans are out there and they're writing us. And I salute them, but I think the FileMaker is not ascendant, let's say.
We are sponsored this episode by ATP membership. Please consider becoming an ATP member today. So for just $8 a month, or a little bit less if you do the whole yearly plan thing, and we have a couple of local currencies as well, you can support the show. And what that gets you is, first of all, ad-free episodes. You don't have to hear ads like this or regular ads in the show at all. Second of all, it gets you exclusive member bonus content. Every show has the overtime segment, which is exclusive content just for our members, a whole extra topic every show. We also, every month, month do member special episodes that are on things like movie reviews, tier lists, and other fun stuff like that. You get access to the bootleg feed, which if you want, you can listen to the show faster than everyone else and totally unedited. It's right after we finish recording, usually on Wednesday nights, you get the bootleg version of the show, which is totally raw. You get to hear Casey swearing and all the weird stuff we go through with all that stuff. It's fun. But mainly, membership supports the show. In times like this, it's the summertime right now. Summer has been historically a pretty rough time to sell ads, especially late July, August. Like, a lot of people are on vacation. The ad sales go down. And this is the nature of ad sales. They go up and down. And, just in terms of broadly across the whole year, like we can have like a whole kind of low year, or we can have low months or low weeks. And with ATP membership, we are very fortunate that our members support us directly. And so ever since we started that, the pain of those dips of the ad sales cycle, it hurts a lot less because the members really support the show. So please consider becoming a member today. We really appreciate your consideration. We really appreciate all the members out there. If for some reason you're hearing this somehow, but you shouldn't be in your ad-free feed. Anyway, please support the show. You can join us at atp.fm/join. Check that out today. Again, $8 a month to start, atp.fm/join. Thank you so much, and please give it a shot.
All right, let's do some topics. We have, speaking of Gurman, we have a Gurman sandwich. We have two Gurman topics with something else in the middle. And we start with Gurman writing a few days ago as we record. Early in the development of Apple Silicon, Apple was working on a processor that would be even more powerful than its Ultra chips, offering twice as many graphics and main processing cores. These chips are often referred to as the Extreme chips. I'm told Apple had developed both M2 Extreme and M3 Extreme chips before winding down those projects due to cost and demand concerns.
All right, pause here for a second. I'm paraphrasing, as I often do with Gurman, and I'm like editing him on the fly to try to make it sensible. But I think what he said was that he refers to them as Extreme chips. I'm not going to say we're the first people to refer to the quad chip as an Extreme chip. I think it was an obvious kind of like suffix with the suffixes that we knew to call, they got the Pro, the Max, the Ultra. And imagine if they had two Ultra stuck together, that would be Extreme. So he has to establish up front, hey, they were making the M1 Extreme, which I think there was like leaked like diagrams of how the four things were going to interconnect. Like the interposer on the Ultra is just like end to end. They just connect to each other. We know what that looks like. And then it was like, well, they never came out with anything bigger than that, but here was the plan for the M1 Extreme or the M1 Quad or whatever. And here's how it was going to connect and stuff. And obviously they didn't ship that. This post here, which was like, I don't know, a few days ago, is the first time I've seen a sourced, non-frivolous, information from what has historically been a reliable source, which is Gurman, even mentioning an M2 and M3 Extreme. Maybe I've forgotten the history and those were like roadmapped out or whatever, but it's saying his wording here, which I didn't change, is Apple had developed both. I'm told Apple had developed both M2 Extreme and M3 Extreme chips before winding down those projects due to cost and demand concerns. What does developed mean? Does that mean they were on a roadmap, as in like we had a bulleted list of the chips we're going to make and those were on the bulleted list? Does that mean some people were at the point where they were designing that? Does that mean they had like, how far did they get in development before they canned that? Because if they canned the M1 Extreme for cost and demand and blah, blah reasons, like as far as I can recall, that's like the last we heard of Extreme, which like they were going to do the M1 one and it was too big and they just really never revisited that topic. And like I said in a past episode, at some point during this, when I was talking about this topic, we got that other completely unsourced, unreliable, who knows rumor that like, oh yeah, don't expect anything Extreme size until after the M7 or the M7 or later because the current roadmap includes none of them. But maybe he just only has vague information, so that's all I can give. But saying they developed them before winding down those projects doesn't tell me how far along they got. So it's not actually that interesting. It could be that when they laid out Apple Silicon before a single chip had been designed, they just laid out all the chips they're going to make and these were on the list. And then just when they canned the M1 Extreme, because we know about the M1 Extreme because like we saw they got at least this far. Because here, this diagram, this is apparently supposedly an officially leaked Apple thing. So they got as far as this drawing. Did they get further than that? I don't know. But I've seen nothing about the M2 or M3 Extreme. But just FYI, Gurman now says, those were apparently more than a twinkle in someone's eye.
Oh, they were certainly more than a twinkle in your eye, but no, I hear what you're saying.
No, they were only a twinkle in my eye. I cannot make them myself.
It sounds like it lines up with, roughly what we have heard already. They had these Extreme chips that were like in development or being considered or being worked on, and they decided for whatever reason, probably cost, not to ship them. That I don't think is new.
Or not to make them, like not just not to ship them, but like
Yes.
we're not going to even make this. Because I don't remember if I talked about this on the show, but I had some information back in the day of like that they got to the point with the M1 Extreme where they were asking vendors, if we asked you to do this for us, how much would it cost? And they would give back numbers that were basically like the equivalent of saying go away, as in they would give a number that they know no sane person would ever accept. Like that we won't do this for you. Here's a made up number that is so much higher than anyone will pay. And of course, Apple said, yeah, we're not paying that. And that basically killed the project, the M1 Extreme.
Yeah.
So Mark Gurman continues, as for new Mac Pro hardware, there were 2 additional models developed by Apple that never saw the light of day, J170 and J190. The former was a new Intel Corporation Mac Pro, so a new Mac Pro with the Intel CPU.
Sorry, I didn't edit out the Corp one.
Yeah,
I usually edit his thing when he says Apple Inc. Intel. That's a Bloomberg style thing, not Gurman's fault. But yeah, a new Intel Mac Pro.
Thank you. The latter was an M3 Ultra version that was supposed to launch alongside the M3 Ultra Max Studio in early 2025. Were you at the point that you would have bought that, John?
No, I would not have bought that. Okay. So this is the code names. So again, that there were 2 additional models developed by Apple. What does developed mean? Well, apparently they were developed far enough to get code names. I don't know when that happens in the process. Do you give them the code name before you start work on it? Maybe. A new Intel one is interesting just because, like, I guess they could have put newer Xeons in it or whatever. Like, I'm not sure what kind of revision that would be because it's not like the Intel one was like super dated and in desperate need of an update. But okay, so there was another Intel one, and it makes sense to can that one because Apple Silicon's coming along. The M3 Ultra version is what everybody thought when they came out with the M3 Ultra Mac Studio, whereas the Mac Pro that does the same thing. Not that it would have been great because we think it's stupid that the Mac Pro would be exactly as powerful as the Mac Studio. And it's like, well, you did it once before. It's no stupider when you do it the second time, but they didn't even do that. So maybe that one got farther along. Maybe they got to the point where they actually did work on that one and then just decided, we're going to can this whole thing. Let's not bother. But again, this is the first information I've seen certainly about, there was going to be a second Intel Mac Pro somewhere in the timeline. I mean, I guess that was maybe there as a hedge. Like, we don't know when Apple Silicon's going to be ready, so we better get another Intel Mac Pro ready just in case this takes longer than we think, and it didn't. And then the M3 Ultra Studio, or Ultra Mac Pro to go with the M3 Ultra Studio. The M3 Ultra Mac Studio was already pretty weird because it was a generation older chip introduced, but still it was Apple's most powerful chip. And if they were going to keep the Mac Pro on life support for a little bit longer, this is what they should have made. Again, I don't know how far along it got, but oh well. More details for the sad death of the Mac Pro.
Was it sad? Anyway, EU drops the battery removal requirement for Apple Watch and AirPods. Hartley Charlton over at Mac Rumors writes, the European Commission on July 14th adopted new exemptions to its batteries regulation that free the Apple Watch and AirPods from having to offer user-removable and replaceable batteries. The Commission has expanded its list of exempt product types to 6 additional categories, folding in wearables like smartwatches and fitness trackers. The reasoning largely mirrors why devices like electronic toothbrushes were already exempt. Opening a compact, sealed enclosure and failing to reseal it properly could let water in and create a safety risk. Products can also qualify for exemption if their construction makes battery removal inherently dangerous, or if there is no realistic way to build in user access given current manufacturing methods. The iPhone was already exempt from the removability rule under the original regulation, thanks to its battery cycle life and water resistance rating.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people speculating that this was like the evidence of some kind of lobbying effort because, like, the electric toothbrush exception. Well, there are electric toothbrushes with replaceable batteries. It's not technologically impossible. So did the electric toothbrush manufacturers just lobby better somehow? And, seeing a regulation like this where it's like, well, we don't want to require things that are, as this thing said, no realistic way to build it with current technology. That seems to not be a thing they worry so much about when making software regulations. Not so much because, that's the problem with software. Anything's possible in software, but there is a feasibility curve to software. Like, what are you asking people to do and how long would it realistically take and what kind of impact would it have and how much would it cost? Whereas with hardware, they're like, people probably can't make an electric toothbrush with a replaceable battery that's safe, even though those products already exist. It doesn't quite make that much sense. But I'm sure Apple is super excited to not have to worry about it for the watch and especially the AirPods. And I feel like the AirPods is the only product where it's like, okay, well, you could do it. There are earbuds with replaceable batteries. Like, AirPods themselves use those little coin cell, whatever, that's smaller than a coin, but the little disc batteries. Like, you could see how it could work, but exempting it is just like, do we want to fight this fight? It's not that big a deal. And we did talk about this ages ago, that the iPhone was exempt simply because the battery in it lasts so long. Like they have some threshold that's like, how many cycles does the battery have to survive to and still maintain 80% of its life or whatever? And because the iPhones use expensive batteries or good batteries, that it gets exempted as well. And so when the rumors about this was first swirling, it was like, in Europe, everything's going to have replaceable batteries. The phones are going to go back like the old days where you could, when you drop your phone, the battery cover falls off and the battery flies out. Remember those days?
Yep.
It's the thing that used to happen, kids. If we would drop our phones and the battery cover would fall off and your battery would come out. And we didn't care because it was
Uphill both ways in the snow.
Yeah, put the battery back in. And anyway, and AirPods will have replaceable batteries and Apple Watches and everything will have replaceable batteries. And that's not the reality of these regulations. These regulations are much more pragmatic. It almost makes you wonder, like, okay, well, what does this apply to? What benefit is this giving to customers? So we'll see. There was an item that I didn't end up putting in the notes for yet another over-ear headphone that had replaceable batteries. And its innovation was not the fact that it had replaceable batteries, but that it had replaceable batteries that were even easier to change. It looked kind of like cartridges. Think of like a big, thick SD card.
I saw that.
Shove in the ears. Yeah. Like, and I love that. I love seeing manufacturers compete with each other to not just, say, okay, well, our thing is like has replaceable batteries and is more reusable just to make that experience better. I think they were gaming headsets, and that makes kind of sense. Like if you're in this really long gaming session and your headphones die, that's really bad. You're like, oh, well, I can plug it in. Is there a cord that can reach while I'm still playing the game? Because if it's the built-in battery, you need to charge them. First of all, you better hope your headphones can charge while they're in use, because some of the worst ones are like, okay, when you're charging it doesn't work. Like you can't use it while it's charging because it will outrun the charger or something because the charging wattage isn't enough. But even if you can plug them in, like the Sony ones, like, oh, I can kind of snake the cable from my PlayStation and it barely reaches my ear if I don't move my head too much. And it's just, ugh. But what you can do in 2 seconds, oh, my headphones are dying, swap. And that's what these things are fighting on, which, like competing on. It's like, not only can you change the battery, you do it without even taking your headphones off because it's easy. They're like on the outside, they slide right down, you shove a new battery in and you're good to go. Love to see it. But apparently none of this removable battery stuff is coming from any of the Apple stuff at all, as far as I can tell, including, I guess, the AirPods Max, if they ever revise them again. So I guess chalk one up for Apple in the battle versus European regulations.
And I think also, like, it's worth looking at, like, the actual problem they're trying to solve here. Making regulations is hard. Because when you make a regulation like this, okay, it's well-meaning, and there's a lot of reasons why you would want replaceable batteries. First of all, it makes things last longer, so it reduces e-waste. It also makes things more repairable, which helps people afford them and use them longer. And so, like, it helps people who need to be on a budget. It helps reduce waste. It helps just make devices better and, just more functional to be able to have, better batteries, easily replaceable for longer. So, like, there's all these
also,
reasons.
Like I said, having like long use sessions without pausing to recharge, you just swap your battery. We used to do it on plane flights when laptops batteries didn't last as long, or in a long gaming session, you just swap your battery and keep going. Right.
Like, so there's a lot of reasons why a regulator would have the idea, or be presented with the idea, we should require that all these gadgets that currently have these like sealed up batteries, we should make them all replaceable. There's lots of good reasons for that. Yes, there are. But see, the problem with designing regulations is that a lot of times the implementation details are like actually going to be impossible, or will work against your goal, or will work against other important goals, or will have to have so many holes poked in them that the regulation is effectively useless. And I think you see exactly what happens here. Like, okay, with this particular regulation, well, how do you take a device like an Apple Watch or an AirPod, and how do you make the battery replaceable? Well, first of all, you have just sheer size issues of like, okay, batteries in a device like this, if you're going to open up an AirPod, say, what are you opening it with? Like, what tools? These are sealed up devices for water resistance as well. So there's a lot of sealing and gaskets and glues and stuff to seal up water. Well, how are you going to get to the battery? And then how are you going to close the device back up after you get to the battery? And that's a really tricky thing. The smaller and more intricate and more precisely manufactured these devices get. Generally, what that means is you have to have some kind of like removable panel or some kind of, maybe if you have, it can be like screwed on or something, but you have to have then screws, and you have to be able to open those screws, or like some way to pop the thing open or something. And then you have to have some way for it to like assemble back together, snapping, or tabs or panels, all those gaskets for waterproofing. Things that are currently glue have to become gaskets. And what that does is that adds a bunch of size and mechanical complexity. It adds points for mechanical failure, and it adds ways that the water resistance can fail either before or after the battery is replaced. So by saying you want the batteries to be replaceable to extend the life of the device, what you're also then mandating, if you don't make any exceptions, you're also then mandating, the device also is going to have to kind of get bigger and bulkier and, maybe less reliable and maybe less water resistant when the battery is healthy. So that's full of problems right there. Then the batteries that are in these devices that are not user serviceable can also not have a bunch of safety like guards against them. Like, you don't want, if someone's going to be opening up your device and swapping out a battery, you don't want that battery to just be like a raw lithium ion cell with 2 wires coming out of it. You want some kind of, look at what replaceable batteries are. They usually are themselves encased in plastic or metal, and they have, custom connectors that are like safe. So like if a baby licks it, it's not a problem. Like there's all these different, you have to have all these different safety considerations around, well, what is the battery part that you were inserting and removing? How do you get those over time? Is it a standard or is it custom? There's all these different considerations you have to do. And then what that does when you have like the additional layer of plastic or metal around the battery and whatever is keeping the battery safe when you are removing it and inserting it, that also adds bulk and size and weight and material and waste to those products. So it really does start to become pretty cumbersome in a product that's very small, like a watch and like an earbud. But even phones, like, the phones these days don't have a lot of free space. Like, I don't know if you've seen the inside of a modern iPhone, or, it's pretty crammed in there. So you can start to see like, okay, this regulation, it's very well meaning, but the actual implementation of something like this in the modern world has all sorts of complicating factors that either make it nearly impossible to do in a lot of devices, or make it such that if you did it, you wouldn't really want that resulting product, or it would make the product substantially worse. So it's a hard problem. And like, I think it's worth considering, like, when you hear about a regulation like this, instead of doing some kind of knee-jerk reaction, going back to the squircle jail with Louis' post earlier, like, it's worth kind of learning the other side of the argument. Like, why wouldn't Apple want AirPods batteries to be replaceable by users? Is it only because they want to sell you more AirPods? Like, that's certainly a reason, but that's probably not the only reason. And there might be really good reasons that you might not be considering or you might not know about.
Interestingly, at this point in technology, I actually think replaceable batteries in AirPods is easier than replaceable batteries in phones. Now, obviously, there are already phones and earbuds that have replaceable batteries. But if you look at the battery in an iPhone, it changes from year to year. That's not a standard battery. It's custom. And not only is it custom, it's custom usually for the specific model of the specific phone. It's not the same even within a generation between the Pro and the Pro Max. Totally different batteries. Next year's Pro is going to have a different battery. There's no standardization there. So it's very difficult. And just to reiterate, this regulation, according to this Mac Rumors article, is about user replaceable. It's not just about like you'd send it to a shop and they replace it. Whereas earbuds, they just use coin batteries from watches or whatever, watch style batteries. Like even the AirPods, if you crack them open, all is in there is a standard coin cell battery thing. Or AirTags, how are you going to figure out how to have a door and do the extra stuff and blah, blah, blah. And is it a standard? The answer is, yeah, there's standard batteries that already fit in there. In fact, the entire AirTag tag is defined by the battery that is inside it, which is very standard. That defines the entire product. And they find a clever way to make a little door, and it doesn't matter about waterproofness because whatever. And by the way, I don't even know what the waterproofness, if that's not really a word. I don't really know how waterproof the AirPods are, because they have like, these speaker grills where the moving air from the speaker driver makes sound that goes into your ear. I don't know if you immersed it and that filled with water, would it be fine? I don't want to find out. I know people have sent
generally the guideline is they're okay with like sweat and rain, but not immersion, I think is the...
Although some people have sent their AirPods through the washing machine and said they work fine. So, your mileage may vary.
Yeah, and they've gotten better over time, and it varies between models also.
But the point is, we have a large menagerie of differently sized, standardized, extremely inexpensive coin cell batteries available for devices that size. Whereas for the phone, we do not have a large selection of adequately powerful, standardized, easy to buy batteries. It's all 100% custom with literally little wires and a press connector. Like, it's not friendly at all. So if I had to pick, like, what device do I want this regulation to land on, I would pick the smaller ones and not the phones, because the phones, everything you talked about, the size, the bulk, the phones would get hit by it so bad, because phones really are pretty darn waterproof these days, and phones are totally non-standard, and there's no room in phones, and every millimeter counts, and it would just be really bad. So I'm kind of surprised that they didn't end up applying it to AirPods. But just like the toothbrushes, the electric toothbrushes that have replaceable batteries that have been on the market for years and they're fine. There's earbuds that have been on the market with replaceable coin cell batteries and they're fine. Like, it's technologically solvable. But when you were talking about, like, it's difficult to make regulations, I was kind of thinking, like, you guys know The Monkey's Paw? I have to ask because this is not a movie, but it's a pop culture thing.
Yeah, it wasn't a Poe story or something like that?
Yeah, and it's been parodied in a million things. You may have seen the Simpsons
including
episode
the
about
Simpsons.
it.
Yeah.
The idea is that there's the monkey's paw, which is this magic thing. I mean, you see it with like making a wish on a genie. You rub the bottle, the genie comes out, and you make a wish. Lots of make-a-wish stories do the same thing. And same thing with the monkey's paw, which is this will grant you your wish. And so you say, I wish for whatever. And it always grants it in like the worst possible way. It's like, I wish for $1 million. And then it kills your mom because she had $1 million insurance policy. So you got $1 million, but now your mom's dead. How do you feel? Right? That's the monkey's paw curls, right? Whatever you ask for, it's the worst possible thing's gonna happen. Making regulations is like making a wish on a monkey's paw. No matter how you phrase it, okay, I want $1 million. I don't want anything bad to happen. I don't want anyone to lose $1 million. I just want to have it. And you have to go through all these caveats, and no matter how you say it, it's like, okay. And it's not the magic of the monkey's paw that causes this to happen. It's the adversarial companies that don't want to do what you're asking them to do. So they will find a way, malicious compliance or whatever, to not do it or just leave the market or whatever. So it actually is a difficult problem, and it is not a friendly relationship between regulators and the products. But that's not a reason not to do regulation. Like, that is entirely a reason to just get better at it. So we'll see how this goes in the EU. But it seems like the EU is being very pragmatic and careful and maybe bowing to lobbying efforts so that they can sort of, and I think this is a good approach, like a ratcheting approach. Don't do it all at once. Do it a little bit at a time. Give people time to adjust. Don't do it in the really hard cases. So if the electric toothbrush people complain, fine, you don't have to do it. But little by little, bit by bit, as the years pass, you keep changing the regulation, making it a little bit hard. Oh, we get solid state batteries and we can put way more power in less volume and weight. Oh, we ratchet up a little more. That's what the whole world should be doing. So I endorse the EU's efforts here.
Real-time follow-up. It was not Edgar Allan Poe. It was W.W. Jacobs. Again, we regret the error.
Someone in the chat room said they wouldn't have come up with a monkey's paw example that was that bleak. I think that's literally from one of the stories. Like, I don't think I came up with that on my own, and it may have been from the original story, but that's the monkey's paw for you. Don't make a wish on the monkey's paw. It's bad news.
Gracious. All right. And then finally tonight, there is an OLED iMac rumor that has just sprung up literally earlier today. Mark Gurman writes, Apple's working on a new iMac with an OLED screen. That's about it.
That is the entirety of the rumor.
Whee!
That's it. The whole thing.
I mean, that's incredible. I think that's exactly the level of reporting that most people care about the iMac. And it's not to say the iMac is like a bad computer. It's just not an exciting computer. It serves its role very well, and people like it for its role. And for the most part, it's pretty unexciting. Yeah,
so that the non-interest in the iMac is why this rumor is interesting, even in its totally sort of like detail-free form. And there was like no timeline given, although, again, trying to parse what Gurman wrote, because he wrote about other iMacs coming with an M5 or an M6 chip. Are those two machines? Is that one? Presumably that's coming before the OLED one or whatever. So don't expect the next iMac to have an OLED screen. But the rumor is Apple is working on a new iMac that has an OLED screen. Timeline and everything else unknown. Okay, and presumably, like I said, there will be a refresh of the current version of iMac with a different chip at some point before the OLED one. the reason I think this is interesting is because the iMac is like not a top priority, let's say, from Apple's Mac division, and Macs themselves are not really a top priority. It's kind of at the bottom of the barrel in terms of Macs that need to be updated. And unlike the Mac Pro and the Mac Studio, with, for reasonable reasons that make sense. People who buy an iMac don't need a newly refreshed computer every single year. They're not on the cutting edge running the hardest, LLMs on their system. They just need the most power. No, they're fine with it for years. So it's fine for this to be in a slow update cycle. Which is why I think it is fascinating that there even is a glimmer of a plan of anything about an OLED iMac. Because it's like, whoa. Why is the iMac going to get an OLED screen? I understand that like the laptops are going to get there. They're the most popular line of Macs. And it just so happens that the laptops have smallish screens because they're portable. And so it's a lot easier to make a 13-inch and a 15-inch or 16-inch, whatever, OLED screen. It's cheaper. It's smaller. It's great. iMacs are, what are they, 24 inches now?
I believe that's right.
That's getting pretty big. Apple just came out with a bunch of 27-inch screens, and they don't have OLEDs. And they cost $1 bazillion, including the one that they didn't even really change. And again, there are no timelines involved here, but I would really not expect to see an OLED Mac rumor until OLED had spread to or at least OLED rumors had spread to every nook and cranny of the Mac line. And I would think the OLED iMac would be the last one because, again, a 24-inch OLED screen, maybe it's not HDR, I guess. Maybe you can get it cheaper because it's not HDR, and still the Studio Display XDR will be better because it's brighter and blah, blah, blah. But what a weird place for OLED to appear. Not weird for it to be on the laptops first, and we'll see if those make it into this year or early next year. That makes perfect sense. But the next place I would have expected it, before we just had the new monitors come out, which resets the clock for 6 years or whatever, is on the super expensive big Mac monitors. That's where you'd expect to see OLED next. They're already $3,000 or whatever. Throw an OLED on there, but they were like, nope, mini LED, special custom, blah, blah, blah. And so I guess the iMac gets the OLED essentially before the Mac Studio, because from Apple anyway, obviously there's third-party OLED monitors. And believe it or not, I know we talked about these ages ago, I'm still waiting for some of the stuff that was announced at CES to come out, because that's just how CES works. So still, we're halfway through the year, and a bunch of stuff that they announced is not out. So we don't have any great recommendations for Mac-ish, Mac-compatible OLED monitors, but eventually they'll be out. But yeah, you get a fancy Mac Studio, and your choices are Apple super expensive mini LEDs, third-party OLED or mini LEDs, and then the iMac's going to be out there at some point with its own OLED, and the laptops will have OLEDs. Maybe the MacBook Air will have OLEDs, and the Mac Studio will be like, where's my Apple OLED? I don't know when that's going to happen.
All right, let's do some Ask ATP. And Jack Johnson writes, as someone who has never considered having a 3D printer, I was very interested to hear how Marco and the family have found it to be useful. What are the sorts of problems it solves? How often do you experience a situation where a 3D printer is useful? I have an 11-year-old and imagine it would be easy for her to find fun things to use it for, but I'm more curious about non-toy applications.
This has been something that I've really enjoyed. The toy applications are very fun. You can go on the different sites like Maker World and Thingiverse and all this. You can find lots of fun toys, and they delight people. Like one of the things that I found like a little tiny milk crate. Like somebody replicated the design of plastic milk crates, and you can scale it to whatever size you want. If you make them really tiny, they're really cute. And it's really fun to have them on my desk. And I printed one or two on my desk, and then instantly Adam and Tiff spotted them and each demanded their own. So now I have a few more, and they're all over the house now, and they're adorable. So there's all sorts of fun stuff like that you can do. Of course, everybody prints the dragons and all sorts of stuff that kids like to play with. But the toy applications, I would say, don't discount those. But on the functional side, what I enjoy about a 3D printer functionally is, I think this is maybe the satisfaction that a lot of people have gotten when they get into woodworking that I've never done. But if there is a problem that I spot around the house, I can have a pretty good chance of being able to solve it. That also applies to other people's problems around their houses. And so, for instance, having the restaurant, there's a bar. It has this wood ledge around the bottom of the bar that you could rest your feet on, and that piece of wood cracked along where people, if you stand up and put all your weight on it, it can crack in the part over the ledge. And we needed something that would hold it up that was strong while for a day while we went and went off island and got some other stuff. But we needed a fast solution. What can we do to hold this up today? So I printed a little bracket. I quickly designed it in Onshape, and I printed a little bracket with little ridges, like triangular ridges to support it. And I printed it in PET CF, so it's super strong and resists moisture because that's important in where we are. And I made a really, really strong corner bracket to help hold it up until we could get some metal in there. And you know what? It's still there. Because it's actually stronger than most metal brackets you can find around here, and it's strong enough to last the rest of the season. And then in the off season, we're going to replace that piece of wood. So that's one example. Another example is I go to a physical therapist sometimes, and she was saying that she had one of those Vaso machines that it's basically like inflatable pants. Like you wear these airbag things around your legs, and they inflate and squeeze different parts of your legs, and it can help a lot of leg stuff. They have some connector that attaches air hoses to a machine, and it's a plastic connector. And she said she has a whole machine out of commission because the plastic connector on it broke, so she can't attach the hoses correctly, and the company's out of business, and nobody sells these parts. So I said, all right, give me the part. And in one day, I quickly replicated the part and printed one out in a pretty hard TPU. So it's very, very strong because TPU is a little bit it's Bamboo's TPU for AMS. So it's a pretty firm TPU as they go, but because it is flexible and has really good layer adhesion, it's really strong in a lot of ways. And I was able to print that out, and the whole thing took me, including printing time, an hour and a half. It was a half hour to model it and an hour to print one. And I brought it to her, and it fixed the machine. Just having this part now, you have that kind of thing enabled. We have wagons here at the beach. You haul a farm. It's like a big farm wagon. You haul it up to town to pick up your freight, and you haul it back. And the hardware store in town sells these wagons, so everyone in town has the same wagon, and they all look the same. Also, when people come over here, they don't know that these wagons are actually purchased and privately owned. So we've had people just kind of grab our wagon thinking, oh, these are just public for anyone to just take wherever they need. So as a result, many wagons have name signs on them, and many wagons have air tags attached to them somehow. I solved both of those problems. I made a custom name sign out of ASA because it has very high UV resistance with two colors. That has our last name on it and has a big cavity behind it to mount an AirTag in one of Elevation Labs' 10-year AirTag battery enclosures. So I'm going to screw that onto the wagon tomorrow and with some security screws, and now I have a name badge with a 10-year AirTag for my wagon in town. All custom modeled stuff I've made to solve very specific problems. In town, there's the Chamber of Commerce in town has these animals around town that and they had these QR codes under them. And the way they put the QR codes on them was basically by cutting out pieces of cardboard with a taped on sign laminated to resist the rain. And they look terrible. And the head of the chamber is a friend of mine, and she learned I was 3D printing, and she's like, "Can you make us QR codes?" And oh my God, Siri is talking in my pocket. It's going great, guys. Anyway, so I, again, used the ASA because it's very high UV resistance, and I have black and white ASA, and so I made little QR badges, and they're now all over town. So I improved my town by, being able to do this. Tiff she has a square ice cube maker, and, for, cocktails that she makes, fancy cocktails. And she brought it over from the mainland, John, and...
New Jersey?
It has, a special storage box to store the square ice cubes in the freezer so they don't touch each other and stick together, melt together and ruin the clear awesomeness of them. Well, she left the tray back on the mainland, John. And so
New Jersey, yeah.
Yeah, so it took me 5 minutes to model a quick little plastic divider that she could then put 4 of them in this plastic divider and just put it in a plastic bag, and that replaced the need for this, box in our freezer. I have a coffee filter holder that I made where next to my coffee station where I make coffee every day. I make coffee at the beach 2 different ways, depending on how many people I'm making it for. Either a regular coffee pot, which has those cone-shaped paper filters, or AeroPresses, if it's just me or just me and Tiff, which has small circular paper filters. I made a coffee filter holder that mounts on the wall, fits exactly, snaps onto the gap between the tile backsplash and the wall. So it fits perfectly with no adhesives, no anything, just snaps on there. And it has nice wave shapes on it because it's the beach and holds both of those coffee filters. My flagpole mount here at the beach. I have a flagpole off the back of my house. Sometimes it's American, sometimes it's fish, sometimes it's the Progress Pride flag. It depends on my mood. And it's metal, and it's the beach. So it all corroded and rusted like crazy. So I printed a flagpole mount that somebody else modeled, but I modified the model to account for a couple of screw holes I wanted to add to it. And I printed that also out of PET CF because it's super strong and very moisture resistant, because super strong carbon fiber reinforced plastic at the beach will probably not corrode as quickly as metal. It probably will just be there and last for a very long time. So this is just like a subset of, I mentioned in the past, I made like a custom shower drain filter back on the mainland, John. I made a custom shower drain filter.
I can't say in New Jersey this much. You're overwhelming me.
See, I'm breaking the system.
You're scalloping me with the mainland.
Yep. DDoS. So,
if only you could fix my my breaking OXO cheese grater thing. But unfortunately, the part that breaks is essentially paper thin, and I'm not sure if there's any 3D printable material that can withstand that.
If you're willing to be a little bit flexible on the design details, try me.
But no, like, can you do things like paper thin?
It depends on where the strength has to be and in what direction and how. Like, can I add some like support?
It has to be paper thin because it slides into a paper thin slot, unfortunately.
Well, look, I could try.
Maybe the next broken one I have, I'll mail to you, and you can see what you can do about it. Because I have one that's in the process of breaking right now, and it's probably going to be totally broken soon.
Yeah. So like, what I would say is, if you are interested in like the functional side of 3D printers, they are definitely very satisfying for that. You almost definitely want an enclosed one. Now, fortunately, there's a lot of really good enclosed printers now. Like, I would definitely go Bamboo because they're easy, and I know open source people. Please don't make me fight that fight. Bamboo printers are easy. They're awesome. I would say right now, the ideal sweet spot of functionality to price in their lineup is the X2D. It's a relatively new model. It's the one I have here at the beach, and it is awesome because it's dual nozzle, which helps with a lot of like support tasks and things like that. And it only costs like $100 more than the P2S or something like that. And it also has a heated enclosed chamber. It has dual part fans. It has a really good filter, like an air filter. So if you have it in your office, it's not going to kill you. Hopefully, maybe. And so with that, you can print basically any material you'd want to print on a home 3D printer, including all these cool carbon fiber ones. Like the X2D can print all of those. If you want to go a little bit higher end, you can get the one I have on the mainland, John, the H2S, which is basically all the same capabilities, but single nozzle and larger. Or the H2D if you want dual nozzles on that, and that you can print larger parts there. But for most people's needs, I think the X2D is awesome, and it's about, with all the accessories, you're looking at about $900. But I could strongly recommend it. Anyway, having that like creative outlet for me, I've loved every bit of it. It's absolutely fun. It's absolutely great, and it's super functional. And you can kind of have a superpower. Like, if you can just fix your problem or someone else's problem. Like when I fixed my PT's Vaso machine, like she's thrilled about that because it was literally like this probably $1,000 machine that was useless, and she had no other way to fix it. And I spent an hour and a half and probably $2 worth of TPU and fixed it. So to have that ability is really fun, and I've never had that in any other way. I really enjoy this, and so I would say definitely get an enclosed printer, try it out. It's super fun. And you can start, like, the first custom parts I made, I was using Tinkercad, which is this web app that AutoCAD makes for children to learn how to 3D model in school. And it's very simple. It's, just drag and drop modeling. I did migrate to Onshape for almost everything I do now, because Onshape is parametric, which is wonderful. Because, once you are, especially if you're a programmer, like if you're listening to this show, it's likely you'll enjoy Onshape. There's a bit of a learning curve. I watch a couple of YouTube videos to learn, the basics of how to navigate it and what to make and stuff like that. But what I like about Onshape is you can basically define things as variables. So you can, instead of drawing the circle and saying this hole is 5 millimeters across, you can say this hole is hole width across. And then later on, you can change hole width. And so if you're as you're like iterating a design, that can be very handy. I love Onshape for that. And Onshape allows you to do things that are impossible or difficult in Tinkercad, like if you want to have like a nice, a fillet, or I hope it's not pronounced fillet. I don't think it is. But if you want to have like a fillet, like a curve on an edge, or if you want to chamfer an edge like Johnny Ive, like you can do stuff like that a lot, like very easily in Onshape, whereas in Tinkercad you really can't. And that makes your parts generally look and feel and often work a lot better than you can do in Tinkercad. But Tinkercad is really fast and easy to learn, and so you can do a lot with it. And as you're learning, that's a great place to start. So yeah, I would, if the price is okay with you, I'd say start with the Bamboo X2D and Tinkercad. All right. Thank you to our sponsor of this episode, Leesa, and to our ATP members who support us directly. You can join us at atp.fm/join. One of the many perks of membership is ATP Overtime, our weekly bonus topic. This week on Overtime, we're going to be talking about the internal roles system in modern LLMs and how that relates to prompt injection vulnerabilities. This is going to be a deep dive. It's going to be kind of fun. So listen, atp.fm/join to get Overtime and all of our other membership perks. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Mastodon, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
So, Marco, you apparently have fixed another long-standing bug in Overcast. I can't say that I've hit this bug to the best of my recollection, but I believe this is not uncommon. So tell me about this.
Well, this doesn't say that it's a bug. It says you fixed AirPlay. Was AirPlay broken?
Well, that depends. So,
all right, tell me more.
It was kind of broken. When I first made AirPlay 2 support in Overcast, which I think was around iOS 13 or something like that, like whenever AirPlay 2 came out, iOS 12 or 13, I think. When I first did that, it was a huge undertaking because the way AirPlay 1 works is it just has like a fixed, usually a 2-second long buffer, and you just play audio in your app the way you're playing audio anyway, and AirPlay just buffers it up for 2 seconds and routes it to the speaker. And that's fine, but it's, everything has a 2-second delay, including like your pausing and everything, and that's kind of inconvenient. The UI showing 2 seconds off on the timestamps, like it's not great. AirPlay 2 works totally differently, and the main behavior that you need to know for apps is that AirPlay 2 buffers up to usually about 1.5 minutes of audio. So the entire way the app deals with it and supplies audio to it has to be aware of that. It has to work in a few different ways to be able to like render ahead all of that content without the UI showing that you're 1.5 minutes ahead, etc. So there's an API to do that. And if you just use AV Player, like the default media playing API for Apple handles all that for you. You don't even have to know. And most podcast apps, that's just what they do, because they don't, what they need to do fits within AV Player's capabilities. But AV Player's capabilities do not allow for a way for me to do smart speed. So I've never used it, with the exception of a few contexts on the watch, which I'll get to. So AirPlay 2, it was a pretty big undertaking to use like the other API Apple provided that gives you like more raw access. It's this whole like sample buffer renderer thing, and that's for apps that like play basically raw custom audio streams to work with AirPlay 2. And there's like this one sample project that they published back when they launched the API. And that's basically the only documentation for this API. It's very limited. Almost no one uses it. So the information available out there on using it is pretty slim. It's pretty difficult and cumbersome to use. It seems easy until you try to do anything and then you run into problems and you're like, oh, this is a weird bug. Okay, anyway. Before the Overcast rewrite, which I guess was now launched about 2 years ago, maybe, what I had written for the AirPlay 2 system basically worked. Like it wasn't perfect, but it worked enough. Now, when I did the rewrite, that required me to change a whole bunch of the code around the AirPlay audio stream player that I wrote. I didn't actually change anything about the AirPlay stream player, but I changed all of the code around it that like manages open files, that sets up the audio stream and manages what file is playing and how times are reported and everything like that. Like all of that changed with the new architecture. But the actual AirPlay component I had written didn't. But for some reason, after the rewrite, everyone was complaining about AirPlay bugs, and I would occasionally see them myself too. Like bugs I'd never seen. Like playback would sometimes just stop randomly, or it would glitch. And like, that's what's going on here. What changed around it that would cause that kind of problem? And I couldn't figure it out. And it's been one of the most common complaints about Overcast. So much so that I actually added a checkbox saying basically force AirPlay 1 usage.
Yeah, when I saw that option appear in Overcast, I'm like, oh, there must be some real problems with AirPlay 2, because when that option appears,
I could not figure it out. So a few days ago, like over the weekend, I was playing an episode of a podcast that I noticed was making audible glitches over AirPlay. Like about every second or two, it would have like a little like static blip in the stream, as if it was garbage audio data being played in the sample buffer. And it was happening every time on this one file. So I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I have a reproducible case now.
I just want to pause here for a second just to say that the excitement that programmers feel when they get a 100% reproducible instance of a bug they've been chasing for years is like, I don't know, I'm sure there's like an equivalent of scientists, like when they do an experiment and something happens that they can't explain, because when you're a scientist, you're doing experiments, you kind of know what's going to happen or whatever, but if something happens that you can't explain, you get so excited. If you're a scientist, you're like, was it a mistake? Am I just mistaken? Let me just look at it again. Maybe it's just like an experimental error, blah, blah. It's the most exciting thing ever. For a programmer, it's like, oh, it reproduces 100% of the time. Because once you get something that reproduces 100% of the time, you will fix it. Because it's like, now you can't, there's nowhere to hide.
Exactly. So, first I'm like, I'm looking through, I'm like, I still don't see why this file is doing this and why other files aren't either always or never doing this. There's nothing special about the file, but for whatever reason, that file was doing it. Like, great. So I bring up Fable. By the way, Claude is a past and future sponsor of our show. So I bring up Fable and Claude Code, and I'm like, this file that I'm playing is glitching about once a second, maybe a little more, but about once every second or two. It's making these audible glitches every time when I play it through AirPlay. Audit the AirPlay code, try to figure out why, and fix it. And Fable goes, churns away for 10 minutes, whatever. Like, it's not a fast model, but I'm like, it's churning away for 10 minutes or so, and looking at everything. And yes, I'm approving all this. Do you want to run grep? Yeah, fine, go ahead and run grep. If do you want to fetch this sample project on the web? Yes, please fetch the sample project on the web. Like, we do whatever you want to do to try to solve this problem. Well, not
Shift tab for auto mode, Marco.
Oh, really?
Yes. I've discovered this recently as well. And I stand by that. I think, especially as you're getting used to how this whole flow works, I wanted to be, I wanted it to come to me after basically every step and say, is this cool? Is this cool? Is this cool? Is this cool? But as I got more and more confident with the tool and instructing it and so on, shift tab to go into auto mode, and then basically just walk away for 20 minutes and come back.
That's great until it deletes everything.
Yeah, well,
yeah, exactly. Right.
Did you hear the story from Rands? He was working with one of another company's models, and he put it into auto mode and just deleted all of his code.
Oh, that's fine.
I fixed all the bugs.
It's still a danger, so just keep that in mind. But anyway, make your estimation about the risk versus reward.
Right. I had to go through, and it's like, all right, I found a couple of edge cases. Like this, Apple's documentation of this feature says you should be calling it this way, and you miss this other chance here, and if this thing ends up failing, then this thing is null, and then this thing fails out, and like it found a bunch of kind of minor bugs like that all around my code. And it's like, all right, I fixed all those bugs. Try it now. So I tried again, and it's still glitching. And I went back. I said, that didn't fix it. Keep looking. So it churns away, and another 10, 15 minutes, like it's churning away. I'm approving everything, all of its grep commands. And, eventually it's like, all right, I made regression tests, and I tracked the entire audio path, and I looked through every single possible way that your audio engine generates audio for this, and I found everything was sample perfect. There wasn't a single sample drop, so it's not garbage data. And so, but I found some other little edge case over here, and I fixed that. So try it now. Okay, so I build it, try it now. It's not fixed. So I go back. I'm saying it's still not fixed. Sorry, keep going, keep looking. So it's like, okay, it goes, 10 minutes later, it's like, all right, I dug through, I made sure that your structure of your code matches the structure of the sample project exactly. So you're calling it exactly the same way Apple is calling it. Build and run Apple's code on your device and see if that has the problem. So I build and run Apple's code, and no, it doesn't have the problem. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so eventually Fable's like, all right, try playing it with Smart Speed and Voice Boost turned off. Try playing it at 1x and 2x. And I'm like, oh, actually, the glitches are faster at 2x. And then I eventually learned the reason why Apple's code wasn't glitching was that Apple's code doesn't have a speed control. And when I played it at 1x, with or without Smart Speed, at 1x, it didn't glitch. So I was like, okay, all right. So Fable's like, all right, I got you. So I went over, audited the whole like speed control thing, and it's like, all right, well, if you call the speed, it's probably some kind of like difference in device clocks, like not like the time of day, but like the audio refresh clock or the audio sample rate clocks. So it added all this logging. It's like, all right, run on your device and AirPlay at this and see what this log says. And it's logging like which clock is being used to determine what the time is and everything. And it's like, is it the sample rate of the hardware? Is it the sample rate of the file? If those things are different, and what is AirPlay using a different, media time clock and, for its algorithms and everything, all this logging didn't fix it. Okay. Then it's like, okay, well, you should file this as a bug with Apple. This is a platform bug. And I said, I'm not doing that.
And by the way, I think I talked about this before, but earlier than you've gotten to now in your story, I would have turned to the thing I've done a few times, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, but at least I enjoy doing, which is, hey, this Apple framework that doesn't have good documentation, that is obviously involved in this problem that I'm seeing, decompile that sucker. Figure out how it works. I can't do this. I literally can't. I don't know how to decompile. I don't understand the assembly code. I don't understand like machine code or whatever. But these things, like I have Hopper installed. I have a license for it. It's got an MCP thing. Decompile the AirPlay 2 library. Figure out how I'm supposed to be using it, because I don't trust the Apple sample code from 2 years ago. I'm not saying this would have solved your problem, but I've done this multiple times, which is again why I said, like I said in an earlier episode, I love having the source code for Darwin, because that's where all the low-level file system stuff is. And I just go to the source code, man. Like, it's so glorious. But yeah, AirPlay 2 source code, not available to you. But you know who it is available to? An LLM with a decompiler.
I never thought of it doing that. I've heard of people having success with decompiling with LLMs, but I've never thought to do that. That's
it's only if that's the source of your problem. It sounds like you've already narrowed it down to Smart Speed, which is not like really AirPlay 2's fault. You know?
Well, no, it's narrowed down to speed, and so so the way Overcast has done the audio engine so far, I write the whole pipeline that deals with Smart Speed, Voice Boost, and like the sample decoding from the file and everything. But I use Apple's audio unit for speed up and slow down, like the base speed changes. So when you're playing at 1.2x, like Smart Speed is engaged if you have it, but like I'm using Apple's audio unit to change like the actual media time of the file, because Apple has a really good algorithm for that. It's really power efficient. It sounds really good. I set it on its highest quality mode and I just go. And that served me very, very well. There's a couple of problems with that algorithm. One of them is that the highest it goes, you can set it to whatever speed you want, but if you set it higher than 2.9x, the way it speeds up audio after that is just by cutting out chunks. So it's not really speeding it up after that. It kind of maxes out at 2.9 and just starts cutting words and, cutting subsections of the audio after that, which is not helpful, I don't think. And that's why in Overcast, the Overcast speed label that says 3x is not 3x. It's 2.9x. And 2.9 and 2.8 and 2.7, I shifted them a little bit to kind of ramp up to that fake 3x that wasn't really 3x. From what I understand, almost every other app does something similar, or it just does 3x and lets it cut out those chunks, which I find unacceptable. And at that point, Smart Speed is getting you more than that anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway, so I'm like, how can you work around this? So Fable churns away, and it's like, okay, the problem is that Apple's AirPlay system library, when you use the playback speed on this file, like when you tell Apple's code to play this file at 1.2x or whatever, anything other than 1x, it glitches. So it has a problem. So you should file this with Apple. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. Work around it. What Fable then did was go and write its own speed up algorithm. Now, the main algorithm to do this, it's called WSOLA. I'll link to an obviously ChatGPT written blog post about WSOLA. I have known for years that if I ever wanted to write my own speedup algorithm, I need to write my own WSOLA implementation. And the algorithms I've written for Voice Boost, especially, I know that by having written those, I know enough about signal processing now that if I needed to write my own WSOLA, I don't know how it's pronounced, I could do it, but it would take me probably like 2 weeks to get it right. And I don't know if mine would sound as good as Apple's or if it would be as power efficient as Apple's. I use all the Accelerate VDSP code as much as I can, but I'm sure they're doing lots of tricks, and they've had this forever, and theirs sounds good, so I've never touched it. The other problem with relying on Apple for this, though, is that on the Apple Watch, I've never been able to run Smart Speed and Voice Boost because the Apple Watch does not expose that API in AV Audio Engine. And the AV Audio Engine on the Apple Watch is the only way to achieve Smart Speed. So I have to use AV Audio Engine on the watch to get Smart Speed, but if I do, I don't have access to the speed up component. So I wouldn't be able to play it at beyond 1x if I had Smart Speed enabled or Voice Boost. So on the Apple Watch, I've never had Smart Speed or Voice Boost. I've just used AV Player because it allowed me to at least do the basic speed ups. So as Fable's trying to fix this AirPlay problem with Apple's speed up algorithm, it just wrote its own WSOLA algorithm and just tried that. And it's like, okay, I wrote my own with Sola or whatever. See if this has the problem. And so after I picked my jaw up off the floor and looked at the code, and I was like, wow, it's full of VDSP Accelerate code. And it's like, this is a really good implementation. It looks like it has all the right windowing functions. I'm like, oh, wow, this is, isn't that interesting? So I pick up my jaw off the floor and I go test it, and it works perfectly. The AirPlay problem is solved. And so I was like, okay, use that algorithm whenever you're using AirPlay then. And then it took me all of about 5 minutes before I realized, well, now that I have my own Wasola algorithm, also add speeds above 3x.
That's where that came from.
Because why not add speeds? Now that I have this, it's like, well, this was holding me back all this time. And now, listeners, if you are saying who would possibly ever want speeds above 3x, I assure you there are people who want them, not least of which blind people. Because blind people, especially blind people who like podcasts and are nerdy like us, tend to ramp up the speeds of things like VoiceOver on their phone and everything as they get used to it. And you once you start ramping up your speed of processing speech, you'd be surprised what you can understand once you are accustomed to it. So there are lots of people out there who actually want podcasts faster than 3x. So I said, why don't you make speeds up to 5x? Or first I said up to 4x. And it's like, all right, I did it. And by the way, I didn't tell Fable about my little, not really 3x, but when it was adding all those speeds between 3 and 4, it said, I also fixed your fudge about the 3x speed earlier and all the speeds leading up to it. So I was like, okay, touche. Like that's pretty good. All right. I would have asked it to do it anyway, but I didn't have to. So it added all the speed. And then one beta build later, I'm like, why stop at 4? Let's go to 5. I tested it out. Like, does 5 work? Yeah. Does it strain the CPU? No. Okay, go to 5. Why not? So in the current pending version of Overcast that's waiting for App Store review as we speak, it goes to 5x. And those are real speeds that don't cut any audio out because now I have my own Wasola algorithm that was stolen. And so I'm also like, okay, while I have this, why not bring Smart Speed and Voice Boost to the watch now? Because now that I have this part, I can then use that to bring the entire AV Audio Engine. So I had Fable do that. And it literally took one prompt and about 15 minutes of churning, and it brought the entire audio engine to the Apple Watch. I had to modify a couple of things about the UI because it made some crappy UI to toggle on and off in the watch screen. I made it less crappy. And I was looking at I'm like, all I really needed was that WSOLA algorithm. Everything else, all the other components I had written worked fine on the watch. Like I had written them all across platform. Everything else was there except that. And for me to do this ever in the past, again, this would have been at least 2 weeks for me to write my own one, and it probably wouldn't have sounded as good or been as performant. I even did a stress test. I'm like, all right, what if I play this on the watch at 5x with smart speed and voice boost? Is this going to crush the watch's CPU? No. 5%.
Wow.
Oh my God. Like, this is amazing. So I am blown away by, first of all, how much work Fable did to help me find the AirPlay bug. And it was really, really good. And it made the entire rest of the AirPlay subsystem much better and more stable, and it accounts for more conditions. It complies better with what Apple's sample code wants you to do. Like, it fixed all of those problems. It audited the entire rest of the audio stream that I build to see, is anything generating garbage data, and like make sure nothing possibly can. Like, it did amazing work. It found tons of small stuff and a couple of big things. And then it wrote me this algorithm that, like, again, it would have taken me a while if I could even do it well at all. And that enabled me to do these other two major things that people have been asking for years. And yesterday I went for a run and I had Overcast on my watch and I played a podcast with smart speed and voice boost, and it was amazing. And I'm so blown away by how well these modern high-end models are able to find and fix bugs in code. And the code they write, I'm still not letting it write that much code. But its ability to find and fix bugs, like, it's shocking. It really shows me how flawed humans are. Like, because like I'm not a bad programmer. I'm not an amazing programmer, but I'm not a bad programmer. I'd say I'm like a decent to good programmer. A lot of this code that I've written over the years, like this audio processing code or like the low-level database code, like a lot of that I've written very carefully, much of which I actually have done tests for. By the way, there's tons of tests now in Overcast thanks to all of this work from Fable.
Look at that.
I wrote almost none of them, but there's a lot of tests now. And all that code that I've written over the years, like I went through all my emails recently. I went through 1-star reviews on the App Store. I went through the Reddit comments. And anytime I found a new bug for the last couple of weeks, I've just had Fable be like, hey, some users report that it's showing an infinite spinner on the purchase screen for some users. I don't know why. Figure it out. And it'll churn away for a while, and it'll usually come up with something that I didn't come up with, of like, oh, well, if the connection fails over here, because this variable is set to nil, it never retries the connection. I'm like, huh, look at that. So I'll say, all right, fix it. And I'll look over the fixes it makes. And it's usually only, a couple of lines difference. It's usually not that much code that it's writing to fix these bugs. It's just changing a couple of lines. And I look and I'm like, holy crap, it's right. I missed that. And so I've been going through, and the last couple of weeks, I've been fixing so many bugs. Because I'll tell it, I'll think about some part of the app that people complain about. I'll say, hey, people complain about the reliability of streaming playback under low network connections. Go look at the streaming code and fix anything you find. And it'll churn away the streaming code, and it'll say, actually, yes, in this case, you didn't account for this, and over here, if the server returned a 200 here, it would corrupt the data here, and it's like, oh my God. And you go look, you're like, it's right. Oh my God. So fix that. Or, people have reported for years like, hey, ever since the rewrite, it doesn't show up very well. I've talked about it on the show. It doesn't show up very well as the suggested app when you plug in AirPods or when you connect to AirPods. And it used to. So I told Fable that. I said, hey, this used to work. It works worse now. Figure out why and fix it. And it'll churn away on my upcoming media intent code that handles all that. And sure enough, it found some stuff. It's like, oh, well, actually, if there's a race condition during launch, and if this database loaded before that database, then this one would fail here, and it would cause this problem. And also, you messed up here, here, and here. Oh my God. And sure enough, you go, look, yep, I sure did. And now it's fixed. This is such a game changer for so much. Because as it turns out, as I said, humans are pretty imperfect. And so many of the bugs that it's finding for me are bugs that have been keeping me down for years. And I've kind of alluded to this recently, but I've had a really hard time staying motivated to work on Overcast recently, because it seems like I'm just bogged down by just old bugs that I can't find or fix, because I've looked for months or years and I can't fix them and I can't figure out why, and I've never been able to make tests that actually show them or whatever it is. And now I can just ask this AI thing to fix it. And like, this is the kind of thing, there are lots of programmers out there who you can contract hire somebody who's like a real expert in this kind of thing, who's really good at debugging, who can look at this kind of stuff. Like, this has existed for a long time, but to hire somebody like that would cost a lot of money. And I usually have either not been able to afford that, or if I could afford it, it's like I could just barely afford it with Overcast profits. And I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to, like, that's not really worth the cost of maybe getting someone to maybe fix it if it's going to cost, tens of thousands of dollars, to have them here. It's like, this is going to be like a lot. It's like, that's going to be, pretty difficult for me to justify or do. Whereas like now for like, I'm on the $200 a month plan now, only because I've been hammering Fable like crazy, but I did most of this on the $100 a month plan. For $100 a month now, yes, Claude's a past and former and future sponsor. For $100 a month now, like, I can have this amazing bug fixer available to me whenever I want. So I am. So literally every single time a bug comes to mind that people have reported or that I see myself, I'll just go tell Fable, hey, this audit the code paths around this and see if you find anything and fix it. And it has fixed so many bugs in Overcast. So if App Review ever actually reviews this, I'm on day 3 right now waiting, but if App Review ever actually reviews this, the 2026.7.1 version of Overcast contains major bug fixes, major improvements, because it's all like stuff that was on my bug hit list. Like, and the last version, the 0.7, that one I included things like priority playlist priorities were messed up after the rewrite. Yes, they were. It fixed it. And it was so subtle. It was like, like there was like a reverse greater than less than thing and like a couple other like minor things like that like I would never have caught. It fixed it. And then it made a bunch of tests to make sure it fixed it. Like in this one, I fixed storage usage bugs, AirPlay bugs, sync bugs. I had it look at the server sync code and the app sync code and say, hey, this is how this syncs. Figure out any possible way that the sync might have a race condition or lose data or anything like that. And it found some and it fixed them. So this has sync fixes, this has AirPlay fixes, storage usage fixes, so background execution fixes. Like there's so many fixes in this build. And I did it for almost for free and in almost no time. So I do think, again, as I say every time I talk about AI coding these days, obviously this does not come with no downsides or no cost to society or no cost to developers. Like this all has some costs and some downsides, and depending on how you stand on certain things, those may be significant to you or not. But I think if you put these tools in the hands of conscientious people who know how to make good software and who know what to ask for, the implications to software quality are massive. And again, like I don't want people to gloss over the fact that Apple is themselves using Claude heavily. And when you see that giant list of fixes that Apple's delivering in the 27 OSs, those obviously came with tremendous help from AI. Like, if you think otherwise, I think you're deluding yourself. Ask anybody who's working in this business today. If you know anybody in Apple, ask them. They're using it heavily. And so to see in 1 year a huge list of performance improvements, bug fixes, like little nice to haves being finally added, that's because they're getting assistance. Again, this is a bumpy road and it's not without its problems, but the implications here for the possible improvements in software quality are just so immense. And granted, it is also allowing people to make more crappy software. Every time programming has been made easier, it enables people who are not very good programmers to make software. You see, PHP, Visual Basic, like this. I've been a user of every language that's done this. And every time the accusation is always like, oh, look at all this crap written in PHP. And like, yeah, but PHP also like enabled a bunch of, first of all, enabled people who couldn't program before to program at all. And people who were good programmers were perfectly able to write good software with PHP. AI is kind of that same type of step, but in a much greater step all at once. It is enabling a lot more people to write software. And in good hands, it is also an amazing tool to enable people who know what they're doing to make even better software than they've ever made before. So I wanted to tell this story in part because I'm just so blown away by it. And also in part to maybe, if you're a programmer out there and you're inspired, like, have it tackle whatever bug is on your hit list that you haven't been able to find or reproduce. Just say, hey, go look at this part of the code. I'm pretty sure something is able to cause this behavior and I can't figure it out. Give it a shot. You'll be shocked what it can find.
It's funny you bring this up because over the last few days, especially when Fable was, I don't know if it was unlimited or if it was just more flexible usage, or whatever. I forget exactly what the situation was, but I know that I am now paying for Fable in a way that I wasn't just a few days prior. But anyhow, I had John in the little disembodied head of John Syracuse in front of me saying, every time there's a new model, especially with Fable, you should just point it at your app or your repository and say, find bugs. And I did that. And for the handful of you that are on the call sheet test flight, I can assure you, and you've seen, there were a couple of builds that were just like boom, 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 boom,
Yep.
boom, 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 boom. Like all of these different, admittedly fairly esoteric bugs. Like it's not the same win that you're talking about, although I have had those in the past. We've talked about it on the show, but a lot of little things that were like the edgiest of edge cases that I wouldn't in a million years have found. And were they really affecting that many people? I don't think they really were. But is it better that they're now affecting, hypothetically, no people? Yes, it is better.
Yeah.
And I prefer it that way. And I've been really pleased with how this has gone. And I have run it in auto mode, but when it's done churning and whatever, I will go through line by line, like it's some fresh college graduate, and make sure I understand everything it's done and what it's doing and why it's doing it. And there are times that I will go back and forth with it and be like, I don't think that's right, or justify to me why you made choice A, B, or C. And usually I end up realizing, oh, no, I see what it did and it's right. But I want to go through that process, for me anyway. I want to go through that process of understanding what it's done, because otherwise I feel like I now have some phantom coworker whose code I don't understand. And that's not good when you're a team of one. And so I like spending the time to go through and understand top to bottom, inside and out, what's being done to what I still consider to be my code. But the point I'm really trying to make is I have fixed a plethora of bugs that I wasn't even aware of, much less things that, have been latently bothering me for years. I think your story is more impressive and more interesting because this is a problem that it certainly affects way more people than any of my silly bugs do. But nevertheless, it's still useful to get rid of these bugs, no matter how big or small.
Yeah, I've been doing this for a while, and I wanted to give you the same caution I gave you last time I was talking about my LLM bug fix releases, which is, there's some error rate per line. How many defects per line of code does any individual create? And humans are flawed, so that is the non-zero value. It's also true of LLMs. The more code they write, the more defects they're going to add. And me being the person who was always pitting my speaking cylinders against each other to see who's better, well, I've been doing the same thing with all the various coding models. And in particular, a fun thing to do is to, as Casey said, I'm always saying find bugs, find bugs. And by the way, on that topic, I was trying Google's anti-gravity recently, their like coding agent thing. And I said, find bugs in my program. And it was like, nope, can't do that. That would be insecure. I don't find,
interesting.
I forget what his message was. It was like, I can't take an open-ended request to find bugs because there's a security problem. I tried to phrase it 17 different ways, and every time it would come back to me with some snarky thing. It's like, even if X, Y, and Z, I still can't do it. I'm like, all right, well, you suck. Anyway, and also I did have Fable drop down to Opus 4.8 at one point because I did something that had pissed it off, and it was like, nope, I can't do that.
Yeah, I had that too.
It's like, it's all my own source code, man. Give me a break. But anyway, since I have multiple models going against each other, what I will often do is, first of all, I'll always ask them all to find bugs and see if they find the same bugs, and they don't. They don't find the same bugs, which is like a little bit disconcerting because you're like, how many bugs are there? that they can find entirely disjoint sets? And why are they not finding each other? Like, why does this bug that once it's pointed out, like Marco said, like greater than or less than flip? Once it's pointed out to you, you're like, oh yeah, that was dumb. Must have been a typo, or I was just stupid, fat-fingered, or just wasn't thinking, right? But why did the other model not find that? And it's like, I guess they're just not looking at the whole code base or whatever. But anyway, so they find different bugs. And on occasion, I will ask them, I'll usually phrase it as propose a fix for this bug, because there's 7 ways this can be fixed. And I know which way I would go, but you propose a fix to it. And often they will propose something. And I've been doing this thing where I will have multiple checkouts, and I will say, okay, Model 1, you fix the bug. Model 2, you fix the bug. And then I will show each other the fixes made by the other models. I'll actually do this across 3 models. And I will say, and I will be like, here's a fix for this bug. Are there bugs in this fix for this bug? And then they will find bugs in each other's fix for the bug. And all that has told me that basically they're, other than their ability to, inexhaustively like search forever and ever and do things so much faster than a human, they still create some number of defects per line of code they generate. And I don't know if it's higher or lower than any particular human would be, but either way, it's non-zero. So keep that in mind when you're there messing with things. When you find that bug that's like, oh, that's never going to happen. Like, that's such an edge of an edge case, but I feel better with it being fixed. If the fix has lots of lines of code, think twice about it, because you may have just introduced a much worse bug than the one that you were fixing. And you're like, well, I'll solve that problem by having another model or even the same model look at the fix and find bugs in that. It's not it doesn't converge as far as I can tell so far. Again, with current technology, this changes every freaking week. We say this all the time. Like, just because we're saying this now doesn't mean it's going to be true literally next week, which is why we keep going back to this well and trying it again. But right now, in my experience with the top end models, they do not converge on perfection, just like humans don't converge on perfection. But they do, like as we've all pointed out a million times, they are such an incredibly powerful tool for helping that you absolutely should use them if you can stomach it. And they do amazing things that were not possible before, but they do not yet converge on perfection, which is kind of a shame. And what's also a shame is that we don't use curse words on the show or in our titles most of the time. And so we can't call this episode F everything, we're doing 5X. Youngsters don't get it. 2004, the Onion article is. They don't know about the Gillette Razor because 2004, I guess we were probably still watching ads on TV, maybe. People who didn't have TiVo, so we knew about the Gillette 5-bladed razor. Or actually, was it just 3 blades then and 5 blades came later? Anyway, I guess to go to Know Your Meme or something, but we'll put a link in the show notes to the original Onion article.
Yeah, all those kids walking around in their Nirvana shirts have never seen it.